Hey there, since this is the first episode of March, I would like to let you all know some cool stuff that's going on in Backlog Land. First of all, I did a guest appearance over on the 0-2 Heroes podcast, that's 0-2 Heroes podcast, where we talked about the fighting game Roof Rage. So if you want to hear me talk about a fighting game, head over to 0-2 Heroes podcast. This month's game on the Tales from the Way Backlog bonus series over on Patreon is Cyber Stadium series Base Wars, the robot fighting baseball game for the NES. And, as always, I would like to thank the wonderful patrons who help support the show. These personal heroes of mine are Chris Nelson, the Top 3 Podcast crew, Zulgeek, Chris Copleen, Eric Guess, Rick Firestone, Nick Ficori, Jill, Jeff, formerly Jerf, Kieran, Soccer, ZNA, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Brian Skirsha, Randall, Jake Martin, Jenny E., a new patron, Roos Launcher, and many more. If you would like to be like them and you want to support the show this way, you can do so at patreon.com/RealDaveJackson. And with all that being said, it's time to dance. Let's go. Hello everybody, my name is Dave Jackson, and you're listening to Tales from the Backlog. This is a video games review podcast where each week I'm joined by a guest to bring a game out of the backlog, play it, and discuss. My guest today is a friend of the show, returning guest on the show, one of the co-hosts of The Good, the Bad, and the Backlog podcast. He's got a J-pop star living inside of him. Adam, welcome back, Adam.
La 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 la. Thank you for having me. I stole somebody's comment grid and I'm ready to perform. And should also say, I am the good host of The Good, the Bad, and the Backlog, not the bad
That's
host.
right. I was listening to your 100 episode special today and heard your co-host, who will not go named on here, trashing this game that we're talking about today. So the good host, we'll say you're the good, he's the bad, and then there's the Backlog.
Exactly. And you don't have to worry about him anymore because he is being arrested.
Right. For crimes against Yuna, which we will not stand.
Absolutely.
Today, long-time listeners of the podcast may recognize Adam and that unmentioned co-host from a previous episode of Tales from the Backlog where we talked about Prey Moon Crash, which was the roguelike DLC for Prey, a really good game. We had a good conversation. We can say his name now. I think Kieran was on that episode too. We had a good time, although Kieran demonstrated himself unworthy to talk about today's game, so he's not here today. Today's game is Final Fantasy X-2, which is an RPG developed and published by Square for the PS2 in 2003. It has since been remastered and packaged alongside Final Fantasy X for basically every modern system. I played this on the Switch. I know it's available in lots of other places too. Since it is a sequel to Final Fantasy X, when we set up the story for this game and talk about what this game is doing story-wise, even in the non-spoiler part, we're going to kind of spoil the end of Final Fantasy X. So you can't really talk about this story without talking about how that game ends. So if you don't want to be spoiled on Final Fantasy X, go play Final Fantasy X, it's great, and then come back. And then, of course, for this game, we will save the spoiler talk for the spoiler section at the end of the episode. You can check down in the show notes for a timestamp for when those spoilers will begin. So, for Final Fantasy X-2, we've prepared some elevator pitches for today's episode. My elevator pitch for this game is, what do you do after you saved the world and killed God in the first game? The answer is girl power. That's what you do. Adam, what's your elevator pitch?
My elevator pitch is, what do you get when you mix Charlie's Angels with Sailor Moon RuPaul's Drag Race and Final Fantasy. You get Final Fantasy X too. Work!
Like I said, I played this on Switch. This is my first time playing it. Played it on Switch. It took me 28.5 hours to get 60% completion and to finish the game. This is a kind of a notorious 100% game among people who try to do 100% runs. I did not even mess with that. I can find all that stuff on YouTube, the reward for getting 100%. So 60% for me, 28.5 hours. Adam, how about you?
You're just triggering me with this 100% talk because I originally played this game on PS2 when it came out, like 2000 and I'm sure it's in your notes somewhere. 2003. There it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I attempted the 100% in that. I think I put in like 80 plus hours, got 99.9%, and I could not figure out what the 0.1% was to get that perfect ending. So this will forever... hang on, I did 2 attempts at that, by the way. So I tried twice to 100% this game and failed both times. And after that, I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm satisfied. Actually, I wasn't satisfied. I was really pissed off. Anyway, so that took me... I mean, I've written 80 plus hours here, but that's probably 80 plus against 2 separate save files. So like 160 hours. But this time around, I replayed it on Switch for the HD Remaster Collection. And I also got similar to your completion percentage. I got around 64%, but I've done like 2/3 more than you. No, wait. Double as much almost. Played for 43 hours. Not because I'm incompetent. I just really like to level up and master jobs and abilities and stuff. So that's my reason why.
Yep. This is, we'll talk about it later, of course, but if you like mastering jobs and, getting that gold star next to all your stuff, if you're that kind of sicko, this is a game for you. So you said that you played this right when it first came out. So tell me a little bit about your history with this. I kind of assume that if you wanted to play this when it came out, it's because you liked Final Fantasy X before that, right?
That is correct, Mr. Jackson. I loved Final Fantasy X. I think I really hit my Final Fantasy love around 9, which is when I got my PS1. And I had 9 and 7 at the exact same time. 7 was so polygonal and boxy that I just couldn't get into it, but I absolutely loved the shit out of 9. And then PS2 came out, and then I got... I think PS2 was out around the time 9 came out, if I'm correct. Or was imminently about to come out. Anyway, point is... Coming off the back of 9, I had to play 10. 10, voice acting. Oh my God. Voice acting like that didn't exist back in the day. So that was mind-blowing. The graphics, mind-blowing. So I loved 10. And then, of course, because I loved 10 so much, when 10.2 was announced, I was like fully on board 100%. I'm like, this game, I can't wait to pick it up day one. I did pick it up day one, and I absolutely loved it. And I maybe was... a little biased and I overlooked a lot of flaws, but I was one of the people that picked it up on the day it came out and absolutely had a ball. Like, I couldn't see anything wrong with it. I was in it 100%, loved it. So yeah, I'm an odd duckling, I guess, compared to the popular people. But what about you? I know this is recent for you, right?
Yeah, recent for me. And it's weird because I played Final Fantasy X for the first time in 2006. So a little bit late, but still a long time ago now. I didn't even know there was a sequel to Final Fantasy X for a long time. Like maybe in the last 5 years, I learned about it, and I never had a PS2. So like I played Final Fantasy X on my roommate's PS2. And then a couple years later, I played it again on a different roommate's PS2, but I never had one for myself. So I never knew about the sequel. It actually might have been when I bought the remaster on Switch, and it came with 10.2. I was like, oh, they made a sequel? That's weird. And then I kind of like took a quick look at it and was like, and I love Final Fantasy X, by the way. We had an episode come out in December on this podcast about Final Fantasy X. Good discussion. I love the game. Played it 4 times now. So yeah, but I took one look at Final Fantasy X too, and I was like, that looks stupid. I don't want to play that. Just
blasphemy.
A real yeah. So yeah, just like, I don't know, looked at a picture and I was like, nope, not playing that. I watched the ending on YouTube because I was like, well, I want to know how this ends, but I'm not playing it, obviously. But it wasn't really until a friend of both of ours, Rick from Pixel Project Radio, put out a solo podcast essay, kind of defending. I think he actually titled it like a defense of Final Fantasy X-2 or something like that. I listened to that. I respect what Rick has to say. And he convinced me that this was worth a try because he talked about this as like a nice story sequel to Final Fantasy X. And I love the story in 10. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll give it a go. And for some quick opening thoughts here, I think that the promise of an interesting story sequel to Final Fantasy X is fulfilled in 10-2. I really, really, really like what they did with the story in this game. Specifically for people like me who love the story of Final Fantasy X, I think, we'll talk about it, but I think they had two choices for a sequel. They could have escalated it, but you killed God at the end of Final Fantasy X. So how are you going to escalate that? So they decided to like bring it down to earth a little bit. And I really, really like what they did. I'm still kind of mixed on the game because I did not like the gameplay at all. And this was like one of the big selling points about 10-2 is everybody loves the gameplay. And I just couldn't get it, just didn't like it. So pretty mixed on the game, but I have a lot of things that I really, really like about it. Mostly story stuff. How about you?
Yeah, I'm not the same, actually. I like a lot about the gameplay as well. But like, I've been a staunch Final Fantasy X defender for a very, very long time. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the absolute bias I had from being so in love with the game when it first came out. And I neglected to bring it up, but I was like in the zeitgeist of the moment on the internet when this game was announced, and I was watching all the Japanese trailers and stuff, and I was just in awe of like how Japanese it was, because this was like a period in my life where I was like fully on board with like J-pop, anime, like the wacky Japanese shit. I loved all that, and this game like brought that into Final Fantasy. And I know that when people hear that, Final Fantasy fans, it pushes them in the opposite direction. They're like, gross, I don't want Japanesey Final Fantasy, even though every Final Fantasy has been Japanese. But it's like too far. Like it's not for me. My Final Fantasy is 7, where I'm the edgy cool guy with a big sword, and this is like girly and poppy and stuff. And I think that's why people pushed against it. But for me, like, I loved the Japanesiness of it and how lighthearted in tone it was compared to the other stuff. Because to me, it was never like a mainline Final Fantasy. It was always a spin-off. And I was just excited, like you, to see what would happen in the story, what would happen in the world of Spira. And I enjoyed the gameplay because it allowed you to jump into this world that you had already previously explored and you basically knew from back to front anyway. And 2 years had passed, so it's like, okay, I love this world. Let's go see what's happening in Kilika, because that was in rubble basically last time we saw it. Let's go see what's happening in Luca, where people play blitzball and stuff. Let's go visit our friends in Besaid. And you can just, at any time in the game, just jump into a chapter and explore that area, or basically, unless it's like locked for story purposes, and then just catch up with your friends and see how the world has changed. And so I find that the gameplay itself is like chock full of a lot of mini games and stuff and like silly little things rather than a serious journey that you would expect in a Final Fantasy. So I get why you'd probably not like something like that. But for me, I was fully on board. Like the story, the fun little, actually some of the mini games are kind of shit. So anyway, long story short, replaying it nowadays with the amount of bias I had to it from back in the day, I did start to see a lot of the shine come off because it is a PS2 game and it has not aged particularly well. So yeah, I have issues with it now, but it holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say just right at the top of the show that you're right, this game does get a lot of shit out there, and I don't think it deserves it. I think there are like definitely things to criticize, and things that I will criticize, but they're not the things that people normally shit on this game for.
Absolutely. Fully agree. And when it comes to it, I will shit on this game as well for specific things, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. So we will take a little bit of a music break. We will listen to a bit of the poppy music from Final Fantasy X-2. When we come back, we'll set up the story.
What can I do for you?
So Final Fantasy X-2 is set 2 years after the events of Final Fantasy X. The world-destroying kaiju Sin is gone and destroyed. The world is at peace. And this is kind of an interesting setup for a sequel to a game like Final Fantasy X with a story like Final Fantasy X. The people in Final Fantasy X were living in this constant cycle of destruction, rebuilding, destruction, death, all of that. And then at the end, you solve it. You take all of that away and the world is left at peace. So now that that's not an issue, this story kind of explores what do people do after this existential threat is gone. And the answer is that a lot of people are just chilling. They're living lives of leisure. There are places that Sin destroyed that are rebuilt. Your characters from Final Fantasy X, like they form a J-pop girl group trio, and they're doing concerts, and they go on cute little hunts for spheres, and we'll talk about that. And everything, like when this game starts, everything is so low stakes compared to the beginning of Final Fantasy X. You know, Sin is destroying shit. And this game really, really like scales it back. And it's like, nah, most people in the world, they're chilling. There are people who are kind of picking up the pieces, and like races of people that are picking up the pieces from what happened in Final Fantasy X. But like your group, your characters from Final Fantasy X that are kind of still around in the world, they're hanging out.
They sure are, Mr. Jackson.
Yeah.
Well, I love this as well because you kind of just have to think about like this world of Spira has been at risk of Sin for such a long time that nobody ever really feels safe because it can strike at any moment until a summoner brings about the calm. But even then, Sin always came back and Sin always destroyed. So it's almost like living in a perpetual state of fear. And what do you do when that fear is taken away? You just become like, what do you do? Like, that's the question, legitimately, like, what do you do? And they think, oh, let's do this, let's do that, let's progress technology because maybe the Albed aren't so bad and their technology really isn't that bad either. And this fucking religion, can I swear? Sorry.
Yeah.
This religion has been screwing with us since the beginning and we're not going to follow them anymore. They tell us that the Albed Machina is bad, but you know what? Screw them because they're liars and they make up all this shit. So we're going to progress. Technology is going to progress. We're going to, enjoy things and entertain ourselves and basically like, I'm surprised there aren't orgies in this game because that's what I would be doing if Sin wasn't around.
If the team that made Final Fantasy 16 made this game, there would be orgies. Yeah.
There better be. I want to see some bacchanalia. I think that's the word. But, despite that, like, it's actually a really interesting thing to examine in terms of character as well. Like Yuna in particular, her entire life was built around the belief that she had to sacrifice herself to destroy sin and bring about the calm. And now that that's no longer a thing, she succeeded about bringing about the calm, but she's still alive. She's kind of like, where do I fit in this world? And I think there's a lot of criticism about her being like a J-pop singer and being quite girly, and she's not the same Yuna as she was in the first game, but she actually is the same Yuna that she was in the first game. She's just trying to find her feet, and she's being influenced by Riku, who is the happy-go-lucky, girl from the first game, and she's sort of emulating that because that's what she thinks she needs to be now that she doesn't have this weight of the world on her shoulders. So anyway, it's a good perspective, like interesting way of changing around what the sequel or what you expect a sequel should be.
Right. Most sequels are just continuing the story with, another big bad that's worse than the previous one or something like that. But like we kind of set up at the beginning, I said in my elevator pitch, like, you beat the world-destroying kaiju and killed God in the first game. You can't go higher than that. So it is like a much more personal story for most of this. Like, there are stakes that gets raised, and the threat of the world starts to, or the fate of the world starts to get threatened and stuff as you go. But the story setup is very much like, how is everybody continuing now that this like shadow has been lifted? And you brought up Yuna. So like, I really like how, you go on this journey with Yuna in this game too. And like you said, you can visit all the places in Spira. Right from the beginning, they give you this map. You can select all of the levels, all the cities, all the places you went in the first game. You can go to them at any time. You can talk to the people there. And in a lot of the places there, Yuna will reflect on the journey that she had in the first game. Her journey with Tidus, who's the protagonist who disappeared at the end of the first game. She'll reflect on her time with him because he was a love interest for her. She'll reflect on her friends, her guardians, who are now scattered all around. Riku's the only one that's there with her from the first game that's still in this game. So there's a lot of like, you go to this place, you'll have a short little scene where Yuna kind of thinks about how things have changed or remembers a memory that she spent with the group in the first game. And I really, really like this. This is one of my favorite parts of the game.
I like that they didn't sort of just slap together a sequel and try and do that annoying thing where they're like, you don't need to know anything about the first game to enjoy this game.
Right,
100% you do, which is good.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, because we want that connection to the first game. That's the entire reason why people would play a direct sequel. The very first Final Fantasy direct sequel, mind you.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we came back for, and that's what we want to see. So I love that they did, tie all of these experiences and moments from the first game into the second game and have her reflect upon that. And yeah, I mean, there's just something magical about seeing a quote-unquote heavily pregnant Lulu still wearing a corset of some kind, which you can't see her baby bump. But, just the growth of this world and the growth of these characters that you had met and journeyed with previously. So, yeah, that's exactly why we're here, and it gave us what we want in that respect.
Yeah, everyone else in the world has moved on with their lives too and are dealing with the events of the first game or like just kind of continuing their life in their own way. Wakka and Lulu, who are two of your guardians in Final Fantasy X, two of Yuna's guardians, they're having a baby together. So like, yeah, it's one of those things. It's like the constant threat of death is lifted. So people are like, okay, we can settle down. We can have a family now, Funny story about Lulu there. She doesn't look pregnant, even though she's like going to give birth any minute now.
Yeah.
During the story here, she doesn't look pregnant because they just didn't want to draw or make a new character model for her. So there are some like, we'll just say the production value in this game is less than Final Fantasy X. I feel like by a pretty big margin. Stuff like the cutscenes aren't as striking as they were in Final Fantasy X. The lip syncing on the character models, some of the character models themselves are, just brought back, not really touched up at all. Some of the stuff is even worse. I thought the voice acting is worse in this game than Final Fantasy X.
Oh, controversial.
Might be controversial. I have the controversial take that the voice acting in 10 is good. And like, they were really hamstrung by things outside of their control. The voice actors were. So I don't know. I played this game and just didn't like the voice acting as much as I liked it in 10. That might be personal bias because I played 10 4 times.
Okay.
Anyway.
I'll just say that I liked the voice acting in 10 and even the cringy ha 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 scene. I mean, I get it. You have to be an idiot not to understand what the point of that scene is.
Right.
But I think that I like 10-2 just as much, if not a little bit more, because I think I like the delivery of Yuna better in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the actors who are involved in this game have... actually, I'm just having a flashback now to Brother, so I take that back. A lot of the performances have improved. There are many, or a handful of new performances, which are terrible. So, yeah, let's just call it even. There's some highlights and some lowlights.
There is a certain tone about this game that's different from Final Fantasy X. It's a lot more campy and a lot more goofy. For a lot of the game, there isn't really, danger or something like that. Just people having a good time. And I think a lot of the voice acting performances, characters that are introduced are more goofy and lighthearted and campy. Mm-hmm. And their voice performances really reflect that. Thinking of like Riku, she was like that in the first game, though. We can talk about Brother now. Yuna's kind of joined by her. She's part Albed. It's a race of people within the world of Spira here. They were like set up to be villains in Final Fantasy X, but they were not villains at all. So you're kind of joined by some of Yuna's relatives and Riku's relatives in the Albed. There's 3 main ones. There's Brother, Buddy, and Shinra, who are on the ship when you travel around. Buddy's fine. He's just kind of hanging out. Shinra's annoying, but just kind of annoying, I think. And Brother is like, try not to like lay on the hyperbole too thick here. Brother's the worst Final Fantasy character I have ever experienced. He's terrible.
He is okay. He has to be, in my mind, the worst part of this game in its entirety. Like, if
I can agree with that.
Him, if you deleted him, this game would be 10 out of 10, almost.
Like a full letter grade taken away just because Brother's here doing what Brother does. We kind of made fun of Waka, and we kind of like ripped on Waka a little bit for being racist in the first game and hating the Albed. But every time Brother talks, I'm kind of like, Waka might have a point. Yeah. I guess, genocide wouldn't be such a bad thing after all. JK, that's the extreme. Yeah.
But, look, this needs to be explained specifically that Riku and Brother are brother and sister. Yuna and Riku are cousins, which means that they're related. Brother, the entire time, is like flirting with Yuna, trying to get her to like lap dance for him. Not outwardly saying that, but she's like, "Oh, Yuna, I want you to dance for me." And also,
he's extremely thirsty. Extremely thirsty for Yuna.
And why is he so Russian? He is so Russian. None of the other
Albed have that accent.
Yeah, exactly. It is the strangest thing ever. It's like, I want you to dance for me, Yuna. Yes. I can't even do it. But anyway, he's like constantly like he's like in love with her, and he's like, when are you coming back to the ship? And Yuna, I love you. I want to hug you. And anyway, it's just like this weird incestuous thing that makes me very uncomfortable. And also, I think he may be anemic because he has these really deep, dark bags under his eyes. So he needs some more iron in his diet.
Maybe that'll stop him from being so thirsty towards his cousin.
Maybe.
It'll be good for him. It'll be good for everybody playing the game. Yeah, if you were to make like a pros and cons list of like all the good parts of the game and all the bad parts, I do think that Brother is the worst part of the game. It's just unfortunate because he's around a lot. He talks a lot. He calls you on the radio a lot. He's just very prominent throughout the game. He's terrible. Some other characters that you meet throughout the game. There is a third member of the girl group with Yuna and Riku. Her name is Pain. She is of the same goth like tribe that Lulu is from. And I don't really have a whole lot to say about her. For a main character, she's barely a person. She just kind of there. She talks a couple words every hour.
I like her.
Serves a point in the story for like, you know, her backstory ties in with other like important players in the story. But as far as her as a character, I don't really care.
Yeah, I like her. I think a lot of her backstory is actually locked behind side content, specifically the Crimson Sphere stuff. So back in the day when I played this on PS2 and I did like every side content thing available, I got the fully fleshed out Pain. Her name is Pain. Did we mention that?
Yeah.
Pain is in... Okay. Yeah, because that's so goth. But she is like... you need that third gothic wheel of this tricycle to keep it running smoothly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lulu retired, so someone has to carry the torch.
I do love that she's from the same tribe. I'm just imagining this tribe of goths out on Besaid Island somewhere being like, now we pray to... What's that band? Evanescence.
Like The Cure or something? I don't know.
Yeah. Evanescence or something.
It was described like the guests on the Final Fantasy X episode, Ryan and Chris, described it as just there's like a continent full of these like hot goths like Lulu and Pain. So I don't know if I would call them a tribe or what's going on with them, but there's a continent full of characters just like them. And if they make Final Fantasy X-3, we have to go to that continent. We have to.
Yep, I want to see it. But yeah, I like her. She's just the edgier, darker third member of the team who is at times very much a mood. She's like the one where like almost like the player character where all this silly shit is going on around you, and then she has to come in with like the dry, sarcastic comment, and you're like, "Yep, work Pain. That's it. Slay it, sis."
If you say so. I got like almost nothing from her as a character.
I liked her. She had like a little female Elvis thing going on. With her hair.
She definitely has a style for sure.
Yeah.
There are a couple of other, I hesitate to call them villains, but they're kind of set up as villains. LeBlanc and her crew, I think the other two are called like Omi and Logos or something like that. Mm-hmm. They're just like Team Rocket, basically. They just kind of show up whenever you're out doing stuff. They're there to thwart your plans. Like Yuna and her team are on these hunts for these items called spheres. The spheres contain recordings of lost memories, and Yuna is trying to find spheres so that she can locate Tidus. She's looking for Tidus because he disappeared. And this is like people fucking, I don't know, make home movies in these spheres and drop them, or the spheres automatically record them. I'm not sure exactly how they work, but they're looking for these spheres, and then like this Team Rocket group shows up to try and steal the spheres ahead of them. And they're really goofy. They're really campy. LeBlanc and her crew, I don't like them one bit as like characters. They're just too much. Like they're set up as like a comedy group. They have like this weird like bam, 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 bam music that plays whenever they go on screen. It's just, I don't like it. This is part of the story I don't like, is like these parts with these characters.
No, I'm afraid not. I'm afraid that doesn't work for me.
Okay,
I like them.
Let's hear it.
I like them because they are exactly like you said. They're like Team Rocket. They're this sort of comedic antithesis of the Gullwings. And LeBlanc, she just does like Team Rocket. It's these silly little plans to steal Pikachu or steal spheres and stuff, and try and get back at the Gullwings because they just have this rivalry which is beyond explanation. And I like LeBlanc a lot as a character because she is essentially just a drag queen. She has like this super revealing outfit, which is like a plunging neckline, big like collar, and she uses a fan. She is literally a drag queen. She's just walking down the runway, stomping, and yeah, I don't know. She's like the campiest part of the game, and I think she is iconic. But yeah, actually, there's maybe not that much to her, other than she has this relationship with somebody from the youth league, which is a bit like, I thought you were fierce, LeBlanc, but apparently you're just after a man.
And that's like spoilers for her character, but that becomes her entire character. She has to find Nuji Wooji, and Nuji Wooji told me to wait here, so I'm going to wait here. Like, that's where her character goes.
That is a little bit disappointing because she was so, I'm going to stomp on your nuts in my high heels kind of vibe early on.
That's how she started. Yeah. That's at the beginning of the game. She has that vibe for sure.
Yeah. So I guess okay, fine. I kind of agree with you. She started out strong for me and I was really into it. But then as it went longer and longer and further along in the story, she lost her independence.
She lost her mojo.
Yeah. She just... She kind of got sidelined a bit, even though that, actually we won't go into it, but she is present towards the end of the game and does help to some degree. But I don't know, they turned her from being like what could be an iconic diva character into being like a little lapdog.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
We mentioned, so again, Yuna, Pain, and Riku they form this team of sphere hunters. They're looking for these spheres. Again, the spheres contain memories, sometimes long lost memories. People can record their own spheres. There's like two kinds, I guess, or two ways they're made. Like you can make your own and leave them around, like certain characters in Final Fantasy X did. Or it seems like there are others that just kind of are recorded if something big's happening nearby or something. Anyway, they're hunting for those because they're always in really hidden, out of the way places, in temples, on top of mountains and stuff like that. On one of these sphere hunts, you find a sphere that's holding a memory of a person, a man that looks like Tidus, as well as an insanely huge, big mech weapon. So Yuna obviously is really interested in this because Tidus, her love interest in the first game, disappeared. She's trying to find him. So you're told that the remnants of the church from the first game, Yevon, wants to control this mega weapon. So you need to figure out the mystery with this weapon and also find out the mystery with this man in the sphere. So that kind of kicks off like the story in Final Fantasy X too. And we won't say anything more about what happens in the story, but that's kind of the inciting event. And then just some general thoughts here, I guess, about the story. How do you feel about like the plot of Final Fantasy X too?
Before I say anything about that, I just want to say you would think that if all these spheres were like home recordings, that the girls would stumble upon a lot of porn. But unfortunately, they don't.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, because that would have been a really nice sort of side quest of tracking down all these adult spheres. Because fun fact, the very first photograph, wasn't it of a naked woman or something? Like when photography was invented, it was almost immediately used for pornography.
I was going to say, like, I don't know that that's true, but I'm also not going to say that that's probably not true. You know, like probably, like, I feel like every new technology is like, okay, how are we going to use this for sex somehow?
Yeah. Great. We can take still images. Now we're going to take still images of naked ladies.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the very first motion picture ever taken was of a train in motion. And
That's
then
true.
like 2 days later, somebody used it for porn. I bet.
Okay. The train was a test run. Now we're getting to the real shit.
Now we're going to run a train on this lady.
Hey.
Okay. Back on topic. I like the story of this game. I think it is deceptively complicated in a lot of aspects because without going into spoiler territory at the moment, but there are a lot of, what's that what I'm thinking of? Like callbacks to the first game.
Yeah.
There's a set of characters that are basically analogous of Tidus and Yuna in this game. So Yuna like has to, like comes across all these spheres of this guy that looks like Tidus who may or may not actually be him. And then also like this big world-ending threat, which was actually foreshadowed in the first game if you pay close enough attention. And then it also gives like this introspective nature to the story where Yuna kind of reflects upon her own relationship that's now over because of Titus disappearing. So yeah, you know, like I like the story. It's not like the biggest thing in the world, but it's introspective. You understand why Yuna would feel a particular way that she feels within any given story moment. Maybe she feels like all of the effort that she went to in the previous game was probably for nothing because she lost the person that she loved. But also like what is happening with all these other things like Aeons and, you know, the world is still at threat. So what's the point? Like I defeated sin, but the world is still under threat and yada, yada, yada. So, you know, she has feelings and it's a very emotional, sometimes surprisingly so, a game. So, and story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
okay.
I think there's two types of storytelling going on. There's like the beat by beat plot, especially early in the game when your villains are LeBlanc and her crew. That's kind of campy and goofy. And I was kind of playing that for a while, like wondering, where is this going to go? I wasn't really on board with that for quite a while. The stuff that I was on board with was that kind of emotional, reflective stuff with Yuna, like you talked about. Like, there's a couple of scenes that I kind of pinpointed in the notes where in Final Fantasy X, there was a very emotional campfire scene toward the end of the game. And then in 10.2, you go back to the place where that scene took place, and Yuna reflects on her thoughts during that time and the group that she was with and how she didn't want to like share her memories of this place for a long time because she wanted to keep them to herself. And there's another part where you go back to a temple where Yuna, in the first game, she was on this pilgrimage from temple to temple, gathering strength to take on sin, basically. And in 10.2, those temples are now like tourist attractions. And there's one in particular where some people got hurt, and she's kind of like bitter and resentful of them for turning these once holy places or places that meant a lot to her into tourist attractions. And she's kind of like, yeah, serves you right, you bunch of assholes, for, you know, trampling all over this place that's sacred to me. So those moments really worked for me throughout the whole game. All the times when they called back to Final Fantasy X, I thought they did that really well. And I also think that this game does a really good job of like playing with your expectations as a player and assumedly a fan of Final Fantasy X. And like, you have in your head an expectation of what's going to happen in the sequel to Final Fantasy X, because it ends on a bit of a, not a cliffhanger, but kind of like I didn't expect that. How's this going to work out type of thing. So you have expectations about how that's going to play out in this game. And I think what they did with that, you know, being very vague here, but playing with your expectations from the sequel, they did a really good job of that. I really like where that story went. So stuff to talk about in the spoiler section, but like a lot of the campy stuff, like, was kind of fun sometimes, but mostly didn't work for me. But this is like a sneaky, mature game from a storytelling perspective. Like, I really like the writing and the, again, the storytelling as a sequel to Final Fantasy X in a way I didn't expect.
You said that much clearer than I did. But that's pretty much exactly what I think. Like, there are these moments even within the campiness, and like, this game is well known for having a lot of cringe. So a lot of that has to do with like characters and stuff. And I know I sort of mentioned it earlier as well, but Yuna in particular, she is so vastly different from the way that you see her in 10, but she's not. Because if you think back to 10, she was kind of like this subtle, demure, I don't want to say conservative because she's not like picketing gay rights or anything, but she dressed conservatively.
Yeah.
And in this game, she's wearing hot pants and has 2 guns and stuff, and you're just like, what's going on? But she'll do things in this game and say things in this game where you're just kind of like, oh, that's awkward. But then you think in 10, oh, actually, she was quite an awkward character in that game as well because she was so sheltered for her entire life. Yeah. And now she's just as awkward, but she's trying to be more peppy because she's trying to emulate Riku, who she's teamed up with. But she's kind of got that fish out of water character thing going on where, you know, yeah, I'm the summoner that saved the world, but also I did live a very sheltered life, and I'm just trying to figure out where I belong in this new world and who I'm supposed to be. And I'm still the very awkward summoner from the first game. I just look fabulous now.
Yeah. She basically like didn't have a normal childhood. She was, she spent a lot of time preparing for this pilgrimage where she thought she was going to die at the end of it. And so it makes total sense that she's kind of awkward and, just kind of trying stuff out as she's older and the threat is past, and you gotta live and do something. So she's like, well, I'm gonna, like you said, wear hot pants. I'm gonna have pistols on my hips, and we're gonna do pops like concerts, and gonna go on sphere hunts. It's gonna be great.
It's almost like her being like, okay, I'm a young woman with my future ahead of me now. What the hell is a young woman supposed to be? I didn't think I was going to have a future. So I'm just going to emulate the people around me and see where it takes us. But at the same time, her true nature comes through. She's always still trying to help people, even though the Gullwings and Riku and Brother and Buddy are like, if we're going to help people, we need to charge for their services because it's a capitalist economy here, Mm-hmm. But she's still like, fuck it, I just want to help people.
Yeah. And she's also kind of like, what's the word? She's like a hero basically around, like everyone knows her. She's the one who saved the world and everybody knows it too. And it's kind of cool how most people revere her for that. Like it's not to the point where she just says stuff and people do whatever she says. It's not like that, but everyone knows who she is. Everyone recognizes her. Most people respect the hell out of her for what she did. And it's just interesting because like her whole life was doing this summoning, but now the summoning is over. The Aeons are gone. She's not a summoner anymore. So she has to reinvent herself. And that's kind of like what everyone in Spira is doing. Everyone's kind of reinventing themselves. Some people are not doing well, by the way. Like the Guado, who were kind of the villain race in the first game, like the antagonist was one of them, was their leader. So they're like intensely guilty about how everything went. People who were really devout in the first game probably having trouble with that because they found out the church was a lie. There's a lot of people trying to reinvent themselves, we'll say.
Yeah. I love that whole Guado subplot, by the way. I thought that was awesome. It's kind of like, what do the Germans do after World War II? And it's exactly like that. You brought up a good point as well about people sort of revering Yuna and stuff. There's also a flip side to that where some people just don't like her because they think that Spira should stand on its own 2 feet and not rely on the summoner anymore. And I thought that was a really interesting point as well.
Yeah, and realistic too. Like, nobody's going to have 100% approval rating,
Yeah. And then I really liked showing that guy up with my gun shooting minigame in Besaid Island to be like, suck shit. Why are you wearing an eagle mask anyway, ugly? Anyway.
So, let's put a pin in the story. We will revisit the story in the spoiler section. For now, let's listen to some more music. We'll come back and talk about the gameplay. So, Final Fantasy X-2 is a direct sequel to Final Fantasy X, but the gameplay is totally changed up from Final Fantasy X. 10 was a true turn-based combat system. No ATB gauge. You can sit and think about your moves as long as you want to in that game. This game, X-2, goes back to that ATB combat where everything is happening in real time. You have a bar that's charging up. When the bar is full, you can make a move, and the enemies work with these rules too. Now, you can't see their bars, but they're there. Difference in this game compared to other games is that other games in the Final Fantasy series that use ATB is you can have people attack simultaneously. So if you hit attack and then Riku attacks and then Pain attacks and they all hit relatively close to each other, you'll get bonuses for kind of stacking attacks. And you can interrupt an enemy that's trying to charge up a spell if you go attack them, and that can happen to you also. There's like a warm-up for abilities and spells and stuff like that. So this combat system is pretty busy. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of, like, you put it in attack and then you have to wait for it to charge up, and then someone can run over and hit you and interrupt it, and then you have to start charging up the spell again. But you can do the same thing to the enemies. This is even before we talk about all the wild customization and stuff that you can do. I really, 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 really struggled with this. I don't generally struggle with ATB combat. Like in Final Fantasy VI or in Chrono Trigger or something. I'm fine in most games like that. In this game, I was not fine, and I eventually turned on the wait mode, which means the thing is still charging in real time. You can still attack and interrupt and stuff, but once your bar is full, you can sit and wait, and they're not going to come attack you while you're waiting. So I turned it on to make it a little bit more turn-based, we'll say, and I upped the ATB gauge charging speed so that I could attack more often. Otherwise, I was like just getting pounded repeatedly in this.
Yeah, this game is surprisingly challenging with the battle system if you choose to play it the default way that it intends you to play.
Yeah.
And I understand why, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I told you from the beginning, put wait mode on, and you just didn't do it for a while.
You probably did, but like, I always want to try it on whatever the default is, you know?
Yeah.
But I was getting destroyed.
Actually, come to think of it, I think games like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI, they have wait mode turned on as a default, don't they? Like when you're in the menu selecting your attacks, it's waiting for you. The enemy just doesn't attack you.
Not Chrono Trigger. Chrono Triggers is on active by default. And I'm not sure if FF6, at least the Super Nintendo version, I don't even know if there is an option in that game.
Okay. I'm fairly certain it's on wait by default for Final Fantasy 9 at least, because they have ATB as well. And I don't recall ever being attacked by a monster while in the menu selecting a spell or something. But yeah, I actually love this battle system in 10.2, but I am a huge proponent of turn on wait mode as soon as possible, because you can get, like you said, completely pounded if you are not a quick thinker and like know exactly which attacks you want to use and when. And unless you're over leveled or something like that, you can get killed very, very quickly in this game if you're indecisive and want to spend too much time looking at your skills. Because even in the skill menu, these fuckers, these enemies will just start attacking one of your characters, and they might get in like 3 hits in a row on one character and like completely knock them out. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's very easy to be overpowered. So I actually really appreciated the challenge in this, but just put it on wait mode. Do yourself a favor. But yeah,
I agree.
I liked it. I liked chaining things as well. That was particularly fun, seeing that chain gauge get up.
Yeah, definitely satisfying to chain together attacks, get bonus damage. So this is just like the base like mechanic that everything else in the combat system is built on, is this ATB system. This game has a like wildly customizable job system. They call them in the game, they call them dress spheres. I don't know, because it's a group of ladies and everything's going to be named after dresses.
Because it's fashion.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Fashion, sweetie. Have you heard of it? Yeah, I get it. So,
it's Balenciaga, darling.
So the dress spheres are jobs, basically. You pick up dress spheres as rewards for doing quests. Sometimes you find them as treasure. Sometimes you get them as rewards for doing main story stuff. There are a lot of them, and a lot of them make up like the regular jobs that are in, RPGs, the warrior, the white mage, the black mage, the thief, stuff like that. There's a lot of really off the wall jobs in this game though. Like there's so many that there are a lot of really weird and specific ones. Stuff that I didn't even use. There's a bunch that I didn't even find. This kind of compounds my issues with this game in particular. This is not me saying that this job system is bad. I actually think it's good. But for me personally, I get really stressed out by the idea of like infinite customization. I really like RPGs like Final Fantasy X, where everyone has a defined role and I can just build them within that role. Like Lulu's a black mage. Now I'm going to make her the best black mage that she can be. In this game, anybody can be anything. And it gets even more complex than this. But like, this is step 2. I'm already swimming in like deep water, basically, just because I get stressed out by customization.
Oh, Dave, you've got it all wrong. The appeal of the job system is that, yes, anybody could be anything, but you decide who gets to be what. So, right. For example, this is one of my favorite things to do in this game, is each 3 of the girls, women, ladies, actually, I forget how old they are. I think they're like 20 or 18 or something.
Yeah.
So I guess they are girls. Each of the main 3 ladies have their own default dress sphere from the beginning, and Pain is always going to be a warrior. Riku is a thief by default. Yuna is a gunner?
I think so, yeah.
Is it gunner? She's a shooty bang bang lady.
Right.
She has guns. What I love to do is I love to switch the dress spheres from the beginning to play against the type. So I'll like make Pain the thief, and then I'll make Riku the gunner, and then I'll make Yuna the warrior and something like that. So it's almost like, well, at least this is how I play it. I get to decide who does what and who will be what, because they do have their own base stats, but it doesn't affect too much of how they perform within each of the dress spheres. So there's no like one particular character who is the best character at all the magic classes, so you have to make them the magic classes. Right. I'm like, nah, fuck it. Pain is a warrior with a sword from the beginning, so I'm going to make her my white mage. I'm going to make her be the dancer because it's hilarious to watch this chick like with an Elvis haircut who is so gothic start dancing the jitterbug or something like that. So it's almost like it's almost like playing with your own toys, or not that you had them, Barbie dolls as a kid, and being like, oh, today I'm going to be a chef and this character is going to be the mechanic. Not that those are classes in this game, but anyway, right. That's how I play. Is I like to assign the classes to these different characters and be like, you are my dedicated Dark Knight, and you are my dedicated alchemist, and you're that character because you wouldn't look like somebody who would typically be that. So yeah, that's how I like to play it.
Yeah, I would just, using the Barbie analogy, like I would just make lawyer Barbie be a lawyer. Like that's all I want to do. I want to make her the best lawyer that she can be. That's all I want. But this game is making me decide. What I ended up doing was there were maybe 5 jobs that I used throughout the game, and all 3 of the characters were good at all 5 of those jobs, and I didn't fuck with any of the other jobs because I was just like, I found some stuff that worked, and I just rode that through the entire game because I was just... The thing that makes it worse for me personally and makes it great for others, this is what other people love about this combat system, is you have these other items called garment grids where you slot these dress spheres in on these tracks, and you can switch your jobs at any time during combat. And each garment grid gives you stat bonuses, different stat bonuses for each one. And if you move jobs along these tracks in a certain order, you can see it on the garment grid. If you move in a certain order, you'll get extra stat bonuses, or you'll get new abilities that you can use in that combat system or something like that. So me, the person who's like just really having trouble with customization, they teach you that you want to like keep switching jobs along this track. And so you'll switch from this job to this job and you'll get an HP buff. And then you switch from this job to the next job along the track and you'll get like a magic buff. And they're like, keep switching jobs, get more buffs. And then if you fill out the entire grid in one battle, you can do a summon and they're really powerful. So that's what you want to do. But then I would get into combat and the enemies are like destroying me and I can't do the switching strategy the way I wanted to, the way the game taught me I should do. And so that was when I started texting you and be like, dude, I fucking hate this. Like, what am I doing wrong here? Please teach me how to play this game. So credit to you and also to Chris from the Final Fantasy X episode, and Ryan from the Final Fantasy X episode, and Rick also, for giving me advice. There was a point in this game, many points I'll say, where I didn't think I could beat this game because I was struggling so much with the combat system. And the advice that they actually gave me that worked was, don't try to do that all the time. Don't try to fill out the whole grid. Switch one time, get one stat buff, and then go fight. Set it up in a way that the first job switch you do will give you a good stat buff, and then just fight and adjust to whatever's going on. And fuck trying to get the summons unless you're really struggling, basically. Yeah. And once everybody told me that, then I was fine. I beat the game. It's actually not that hard of a game because nothing in the game can handle 3 Dark Knights fighting. But boy, I struggled for so long.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the same thing with Final Fantasy X, right? Is yes, Yuna can summon her Aeons, but you don't want to summon her Aeons in every single battle because then nobody else gets experience. Right?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the same sort of thing where in this you have all 3 ladies, and do you want to make a summon with each of them, or pick one to have them constantly change and then have the other 2 be support or whatever? But I don't rely on those things. That I don't think I maxed out those garment grids either. I think I summoned 3 times and that was it throughout the entire game. Because like, the thing that I love most about this is I can put a different garment grid on each of the girls and they have their own dress spheres within that. So it's like, okay, Riku's going to be the alchemist with the Dark Knight and the samurai or whatever, and Pain is going to be the white mage and the dancer, and I can't actually remember what else I gave her, but they all have their own grids. They're all going to change into very different jobs for the most part. But I always reach a point within the games where I'm like, I'm going to max out everything with everyone. And then that's why I did. That's why I did at the top of the episode 20 more hours than you, was because I just sat there.
Like, just grinding out jobs and abilities. Yeah.
Yeah. Grinding out everything until I get that little star that I've mastered it. But I love that. I love like this kind of customization, this kind of leveling up is what I live for, because I get to play dress-ups with these Barbies, which is what I could never do as a kid. And it's like, yeah, I get to like play with these cute girls. I get to dress them up. And it sounds perverted when I say it like that, but like, it's fashion.
It is. All the jobs have their own costumes that are outrageous. So if you're into the fashion of like the different dress spheres, you should see them. They're crazy.
Yeah, I think it's also an important time to bring up that this is where the Sailor Moon aspect comes into it, because there's like this really cute little transformation animation each time they switch between the jobs. It's fun for the first time, but turn it off in the menu, otherwise you're going to waste a lot of time.
Long. Yeah.
But it's kind of like in old school Digimon, where the Digivolutions were taking too long. So in later episodes, they took like 2 seconds and then it was over. But anyway, I love like the outfit changes. I love all that stuff. And I think this game also catches a lot of flack for being quote unquote fan servicey. And I just want to defend it, because I think in the grand scheme of fan service, a very flat-chested Riku in a bikini is not particularly attractive compared to a lot of anime with big-titted, chicks walking around and jiggle physics. Like, you think fan service, you think big butts, big tits, jiggle motion, sexually suggestive situations and stuff. In terms of fan service in this game, it is incredibly mild, I would say.
Yeah, I think this game definitely has the most revealing costumes of any Final Fantasy game, for sure.
Yeah.
But there is like a girl power kind of theme to the entire game. And like you said, there is like this dress up aspect. And we talked about how in Final Fantasy X, every time you win a battle, Lulu bends over and her tits jiggle in the camera. And that's not in this game. So yeah, I didn't particularly see this as like fan servicey trying to give Dave a boner or something like that. It was very much like No, they have all these cool costumes. And again, like, this is a world where people were not allowed to have fun and enjoy things before. So now this is, people wearing these outrageous costumes and stuff like that feels right for the world in a way that didn't bother me at all.
Yeah. I don't think any of them are particularly sexy either. I think the biggest tits and the most sexualized character design is LeBlanc with her plunging neckline.
100%. Yeah.
And her tits aren't even that big. They never jiggle. They're hard as a rock. And she's more of a comedic relief character than a sexy character, So there's like this silliness to it. And I think a lot of the outrageous costume designs and stuff like that is more like something that you would see in Harajuku in Tokyo, like where all the goth Lolitas and stuff hang out with their crazy outfits and all that sort of stuff. It's not like what you would find on a hentai porno or something like that. It's very, very mundane, non-sexualized outfits, but they're all great. Most of them are really good, I think.
Some of them are real funny too. Like I think it's the dancer that has like this outrageous hat on, like this really fancy hat and stuff. I don't know if it's the dancer or...
No, is that the samurai?
It's not a samurai hat. It's like a fancy lady Kentucky Derby hat. There's one of the jobs that has something like that. I can't remember.
The black mage.
Yeah, the black mage. Yeah, that's what it is. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
We're going to the races.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also love the fact that each of the girls have their own specific designs for each of the jobs. It's not one job fits all in the character design. All of them look different in different ways. They all have the same motifs and stuff like that. They're all essentially the same thing, but they're all designed specifically differently from each other, and a lot of them are color-coded differently as well. And I love the attention to detail they put into that.
The attention to detail. They couldn't make a pregnant Lulu character model, but they made fucking 40 character models for all of the three girls wearing all the jobs.
Do you know how many polygons it takes for a pregnant belly? That shit costs money.
That's true. The next part of like the customization, the last part that goes deeper, is each of the jobs have abilities that are specific to that job that you unlock by fighting and getting a special type of experience points. And you can set what ability you want to like work on. The issue I had with this, because I had a problem with this too, is you don't know what abilities are coming up next. So like there's a couple of jobs. The white mage was one of them, where there was an ability I wanted. Maybe let's say it's Asuna that heals status effects. It's not on the ability board when you first start. It's on the ability board, but you can't see it. You don't know where it is. You have to unlock something else before Asuna, and then, Asuna will pop up once that first one is unlocked. But the first one sucks. I don't want that ability, so I didn't want to spend time unlocking it. So I went most of the game without some very helpful abilities because I didn't know what I should be prioritizing. Which sucks because the sphere grid in Final Fantasy X, you could look at the entire sphere grid and plan out how you want to build your characters. So it's like 4 separate levels of customization and combat in like Final Fantasy X-2's gameplay. All 4 of them did not work for me. And I just like really had a hard time. I had to check a guide for like what abilities are there and where are they? So how can I like prioritize them? Some of the abilities are really, really good though. So like once I found out that the thief gets an ability where they get to act first in every single fight, I would start every character as a thief, set up the garment grid so that your first job change would give you a big stat buff for that character's main stat for the job I wanted them in. They have the ability to go first, so they start every battle. I switch to their main class. They have a buff before the enemy can even do anything. Like, that's really cool, but that's a rare instance of me figuring all this out for myself. A lot of it was just, I'm looking at the ability list. I don't really think any of them sound good, but there's good stuff hidden behind the stuff I don't want. And that was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I want to counter that, if I may.
You may.
Because it's essentially like the old school Final Fantasies, right? You have a white mage character like Rosa from Final Fantasy IV. You never oh wait, hang on, maybe this is a terrible analogy, but I'm just thinking maybe in Final Fantasy IV you actually bought the abilities, but if I'm correct, you didn't. You would unlock them as the character leveled up, so you wouldn't necessarily know exactly what ability they're going to unlock as they're leveling up. It just happens after they level up. So the way that the ability thing is set up within the dress sphere is you can either prioritize a specific ability that is on the board at the moment, and it's kind of divided into two in some ways. So the ones at the top are your active abilities, your ones that you select in battle to attack an enemy with or to cast a healing spell or whatever else. And the ones at the bottom are typically your passive abilities. So the ones that allow you to act first in battle, reduce the cast time of black magic spells. I'm going to get cancelled. Or white magic or whatever cast times. So it's kind of like with white spells, with white magic spells in particular, you kind of have to think of the hierarchy of spells in all of the Final Fantasy games, which is you always start with a cure, you always go up to a Asuna, then a Curaga, not a Curaga, a Cura, then, you build up to protect, reflect, blah, 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 and then you end off with a Curaga, which is the best healing spell, that sort of thing. So as you learn the abilities, it's not good to skip one, because if you skip one, then you may not unlock the next one to be learned. So it's like you have to learn the hierarchy. You can't just skip straight to the Ultima or the Holy spell. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, they couldn't do it that way because you wouldn't want a level 10 character who suddenly knows the best spell in the entire game because you've grinded out to do that.
Yeah, it's just that they give you the choice in this game of what you want to level up. And sometimes those like hierarchies, like Curaga, that's laid out in a way that made sense. But a lot of the other abilities didn't. And it would be like, you learn this white magic spell, and then behind it is the one that cures status effects. The one in front of it wasn't related in that way. But like you're giving me a choice of abilities to level up, but you're hiding it. You don't really make it clear what like the connections are between them. So like you're giving me a choice. I'm going to pick the stuff that sounds good, but the stuff that I actually want is hidden behind the stuff that's not good. Like that's where the issue was for me. Okay.
But the less good stuff though is like typically of a much lower AP requirement than the good stuff. So, the level that you're receiving AP, you're like, okay, it's quicker for me to dump 20 AP into a cure spell than try and level up a passive ability, which is going to take 100 AP points rather than 20. Because that's more of a late game ability.
I suppose. But like I wanted the higher level thing. I want the thing that cuts casting time down, because casting takes time and enemies can interrupt it. And if your spells get interrupted, you could get party wiped because your big healing spell got interrupted. So I want that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense and all. But then it just means that you can cast the weakest magic really fast.
That's true. Yeah. So
I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, not to camp out on this for too long, but just something that compounded other gameplay issues that I had with it. Like I was very lost. The game explains it to a certain degree, but I think that they make it more complicated than it actually is. Like the instructions they give you make you think that you should be doing a lot more than you actually need to be doing as far as like battle strategy goes. So
I can get that. Just wondering though, off the back of that, which jobs were you using the most? Because I think there's 18 or something
there's
dress
a lot
spheres that you can get. Yeah, there's quite a few, and I like to experiment with almost all of them. And sometimes I pick the weakest ones just out of fun. But you said that you relied on 5 only. So which ones were they?
Thief, so that I could get that first move on every turn. I never used anything else that the thief did. But everyone started every boss fight as a thief just to get that free switch. Dark Knight, because it's just very, very powerful if you if you master it. Black mage, like I had Yuna be a black mage, and she was the main damage dealer for a lot of the game. I used the warrior because they have like the armor break, magic break spells or abilities. Those are super helpful. This is where like some familiarity from Final Fantasy X comes in, because a lot of the abilities do transfer over in the same way. And then for a lot of the game, I used the dancer. Riku was the dancer because they can do like a put darkness on everybody ability, and she sings and dances, and the singing and like the music throughout the rest of the game is pretty good. The singing during the battle, like when you turn on the dancer thing and she sings a little ditty, is terrible, but it's funny. So yeah, that made me laugh often, but it was pretty useful for a lot of the game. But like toward the end of the game, it was really just like thief, dark knight, white mage for like protect and stuff, and then maybe warrior. Not much else, not much variety.
Okay. That's a little disappointing because it sounds like you're using quite weak base classes. So you didn't experiment much with the other ones. But fair enough. I think for myself, I primarily used gun mage on almost everybody because that's like the blue mage of the game. And you get some really powerful spells that way. I also used berserker towards the end of the game for almost everybody. Samurai is extremely useful because you can nullify status bonuses where certain enemies boost their defense and their attack. So you can like immediately nullify that. And I also use Lady Luck for all of the girls because it doubles your experience points and AP points, I'm pretty sure. And that one is mostly reliant on like slot machines and using dice and their dice attack. You can roll like 4 dice. And if you get like 4 6s, then it's like, what's my math? Hang on. 20. It's a lot of hits in, and it takes a while. So it gets the combo meter really high and the bonus damage really high. But also, if you get 4 of the same kind, it doubles the damage of each of those hits. So you can take down bosses in a lucky dice roll very, very quickly. But yeah, other than that, Alchemist I found was my main healer because it just uses items and you can use a mega potion like every single turn and heal everything. Oh, there's so many good ones. I could go on and on. Dark Knight, I use that, of course, because it's so overpowered, but after a certain point I had to sub it out. But I basically didn't use any of the default starter 3 jobs, and I moved on to everything else as soon as I could.
Okay, you know why I didn't experiment with all those fun-sounding jobs? Is because you have to grind to like unlock the abilities and stuff like that. And I'm not opposed to grinding, but if I'm going to grind, the combat either has to be easy and mindless, like in Final Fantasy VI or in Xenogears or something like that, or it has to be like something I really like in Final Fantasy X. I like the combat. I didn't mind grinding. In this game was neither of those. It was not easy, and I didn't like it, so I didn't want to fight stuff. So let's say I pick up the Samurai Job Sphere. I take one look at it. I'm like, I don't really know what this is good at, and I'm definitely not going to spend the next hour grinding up the abilities to find out if it's good or not, so I'm not using it. Once someone gave me the tip that Dark Knight was great, I was like, okay, I'm mastering Dark Knight, and everything else... see ya. Yeah.
Okay. So once you mastered something, you continued using that through the entire game?
Yep.
See, this is where you got it wrong. Once you master something,
I know you're supposed to move on to the next thing, but like I'm having a really hard time with the combat. So using jobs that don't have their good stuff against ever increasing difficulty was a bad combination for me because I just had such a hard time with this whole thing.
Okay. Well, the way that I would do it is I would kind of, what's that word? Like I would have somebody close to mastering something, then I would have somebody just starting a new one, and then I would have somebody that's sort of in the middle. So they're all of varying degrees of mastering a class. And then that way you can sort of pivot back and forth. Somebody masters something, they do something else that's kind of weaker, but they also have 2 other characters backing them up who are close to mastering something. So it's like it's like juggling the power or whatever. Does that make sense?
It does, but I cannot relate to that. That's like next level strategizing. I was nowhere near that. Just, again, I had a really hard time with the combat. Basically, until maybe 2/3 of the way through the game, I figured out the start as a thief, switch to the best class, and then just pound the enemy with Dark Knight. That was basically what I did.
Okay.
So, yeah. It's just, I'm kind of a lost cause with this combat system. If I played it again, maybe I would be better, but I don't think I'm going to play this game again. So
okay, fair enough. Yeah. Let's move on.
Let's listen to some music. We'll come back and clean up other gameplay stuff. So in 10.2, we talked about how you can choose any location available on the map at any given time. You can basically choose when you want to do main story quests or when you want to do side quests. They will mark like big side quests that are available. But you can also go to other places and just go walk around or go grind or do whatever you want in these other locations. Side quests are interesting in this game. We said at the beginning, this is a tough game to 100%, and it's because in order to 100% it, you have to complete all of the side quests, and the thing that makes that tough is the side quests in this game continue from chapter to chapter. So like in chapter 1, you go to Besaid, you start a side quest, you'll finish that part, and then in chapter 2, you got to go back, continue that side quest, yada, 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 and then while you're doing that, it's still difficult to 100% it, but like that's how the side quests work. So if you're able to see them through to the end, you get good rewards. A lot of them have really, really good stories, which I want to talk about in the spoiler section. However, early in the game, I did not start a lot of the quests, or I broke them halfway through because I went somewhere. The quest will say like, go to this sub-region of this area, and then you'll find someone to do a quest. And then I go there. It turns out it's this giant fucking mountain. I can't find the quest, so I just left. And then that quest is broken for the rest of the game. Like there's no more side quests on Mount Gagazet because I fucked up the, leg 2 of 5 or whatever. So it's interesting how they laid these out as like these continuing stories and not just these one-off, quests like a lot of open world games do. That also makes it harder to keep up with them if you're not following a guide.
Yeah, it was an interesting choice. I didn't mind it personally because the first time I played it, I was so enthusiastic about going to every single location anyway. But if you want to 100% this game, you 100% need a guide because there are like minute little actions that you take which will contribute to a 0.1% of your completion rate, which you can miss, which I have missed twice. So even with a guide,
not that you're bitter about it or anything.
No. No, I mean, on the PS2, they didn't even have trophies, so it's not like I was playing for a platinum or anything. But, if you're on the PS4 version or something, don't even bother. Even with a guide, it's next to impossible. But I kind of like the choice to do it the way that they did it. Not with the percentage completion rate, but with the way that the side quests are set up. So you're on your little selection screen of, I want to go to Besaid Island, I want to go to Zanarkand, I want to go to wherever. It doesn't necessarily have a mission start thing on it unless it is a main mission. So you might not even know that there's a quest there until you actually go. So once you go there and you start talking to people, you're like, oh, the Albed want me to do this. So that's like a whole new chain of side quests. So yeah, like you said, if you don't finish that side quest within that chapter and then you move on with the main story, when you come back in chapter 2, you can't continue it most of the time. So yeah, there's also like Crimson Spheres that you can miss in the very first chapter, which I missed this time around. And if you don't have them, you can't go to the bonus dungeon at the end of the game. There's no way to go back and collect them. So I was like, fuck. I really screwed myself over with that because I was going off of like muscle memory and not using a guide this time around. And whoops, turns out I don't remember everything from like 20 years ago that I thought I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I don't mind. Like a lot of people would criticize this game for not being a journey through the locations like in Final Fantasy X. But I don't mind this freedom to select each location and go and do it at your leisure if you choose to.
No, a lot of the game, like the story, the like quieter character moments, but also these side quests are set up to reward people who love the story of Final Fantasy X and want to keep revisiting these places. So that's really shows in the side quests too. I think that it's interesting that they set it up this way. The quote, true ending is hidden behind getting a 100% completion. But as we said, like, just don't fucking do it. Just watch it on YouTube. Like, play the game, beat the game, and then just watch the real ending on YouTube. And we'll talk about that real ending in the spoiler section for sure. What you're doing in the side quests, now that I've said, like, I like the way that it's set up, and I think a lot of the story content in the side quests is good. I think a lot of what you're doing gameplay-wise in the side quests is terrible. There's a lot of alternate gameplay, like not just go to this place, do a dungeon type gameplay. There is a run and gun section where they make up this entire new gameplay form to run and gun, kill these monsters. There's a section where you have to race with the Albed to kill monsters faster than them. There's a lot of different, like, mix it up style stuff. But I think you mentioned this at the top of the show. This is the biggest thing that stands out as this being a PS2 game. Mm-hmm. This stuff feels bad. I think a lot of these sections are really terrible. Like that run and gun section is awful. Like, I wanted to do it because I wanted to see what was going on with the quest in that section, but I hated that gameplay. And there's some of them that's not bad, but there are some where it's like, whoa, this is... I don't know if I could put myself back in 2003, but like, I don't think I would have liked this back then either.
Yeah, I don't think I liked it back then either as well. It's this weird thing where all of these mini games are underbaked. And it's because, I mean, this is just the way I rationalize it in my head. Squaresoft are good at RPGs. I mean, not so much anymore, but they were back then. So they weren't super familiar with things like run and gun thingamybobs or I will give them that Sphere Break is actually quite good, but they've always been good at like the mini card games and stuff.
Card games, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of in line with the card game type of thing, but with coins. But other things like the Cactuar mini game, like shooting the Cactuars and going and finding them around the world, that was painful. I hated that one. And also, they've completely bastardized Blitzball. I don't know what the hell they were thinking.
Oh my God. Yeah, they turned Blitzball into like Football Manager. Like that video.
I hate it. Hate it.
You know what I think part of it is with these mini games is they all take place within the same combat engine, or not combat, gameplay engine from Final Fantasy X and then X-2. And that engine was made for running weirdly around these levels. Like the run animation for your characters is so weird and unique to this engine that when they try to translate it out of that, out of turn-based or the ATB combat, and they're like, we're going to use the same engine to make a run and gun minigame. It's just bad. Like, it doesn't fit. I think that's what's going on.
I mean, thinking back to 10, some of those minigames were kind of shit too, now that I think about it. Like the Chocobo one to get Tidus's ultimate weapon.
Oh, the
that
racing?
Was shit. Yeah, that was terrible. Hated that. Although Blitzball was really good. I wasted a lot of time on Blitzball. Yeah, no, you can tell that the minigames in 10.2 are coming from a place where they had a much lower budget and they may or may not be very well versed in the type of genre that they're trying to do, like this whole shooting thing. Like, I get Yuna has guns now, so we have to put in a shooting minigame. But, we're not very good at shooting. Case in point, Final Fantasy VII Dirge of Cerberus. I think that came out after this, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, RPGs are what they do, not these like little mini game things. And if they're going to do the mini games, they need to get in touch with the people that make Mario Party, because then they can at least make decent mini games.
Yeah, put some fucking WarioWare mini games in here. I will agree with you. Sphere Break is fun. It's a kind of math game with coins. It's tough to describe. I'm not really going to try and describe how it works. But as far as like card games or like, you know, tabletop games, it's the answer to the triple triad and stuff like that. It's pretty fun. It doesn't replace Blitzball, because they fucked up Blitzball in this game. Blitzball sucks. You get a chance to do it, and it's all stats. You don't have any control over the players. It is literally like you are playing Football Manager again, like that. But Sphere Break is okay. There's some missions where you have to go do it. Sphere Break gets way too hard for me. Like, there was a certain point where I was like, I can't do this.
You're not good at maths?
I'm like, I can add 4 + 7, which is what this game is doing. But like, the way they make it difficult is they're like, okay, so on easy mode, you got to hit the target number and get like 20 points or something like that. It's like, I can do that. Or I can do the medium where it's like, get 40 points. And then it's like, for a 5-star difficult match, do it fucking 85 times. And I'm like, I can't. I just like can't do it in 60 seconds or whatever, how much time you get.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that one.
Okay, fair enough.
Also, kind of semi on the subject of minigames to some degree. We kind of neglected to bring it up earlier, but this game has like jumping and climbing obstacles in dungeons, which is unique for this game, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, wasn't in 10.
I don't recall it being in the game other than Final Fantasy X-2 up until I think it was next in 13 or something. So this is like the first time that you've had some sort of semblance of platforming to some degree. But it's like the whole automated, hold down the button and approach the ledge and she'll automatically climb it. Anyway, I just thought that was worth bringing up because there are some strange dungeons in here with very linear corridors and very strangely placed ledges to climb up onto. Interesting design choice.
There are some games where that kind of thing like makes my lizard brain happy. Like I like that in Sea of Stars. 10-2 didn't really do it for me. I think it's just the animations are real sloppy, and when you're hopping from platform to platform, you like bounce like way high up in the air from platform to platform, and it looks goofy. And like Final Fantasy X had like really goofy run animations, and 10-2 has really goofy run animations. Like Yuna runs like with her hands out to her sides and stuff like that. And so like the jumping is goofy like that too. So I don't know, just really didn't really do it for me. It's kind of funny to look at, I guess.
Yeah. I wish they would remastered the animations when they redid this game, but I guess they didn't have the budget.
At least they put a fast forward in. That was good.
Did they?
They did in the remastered one.
Oh, I don't think I ever used it. Whoops.
It's not in 10, but it's in 10-2.
I had no idea. I'd played this game without the fast forward.
Well, there we go. That's why your time was higher.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. Oh, well.
I guess the last thing to bring up before we do wrap-ups here is I meant to talk about the music earlier, but I didn't. The music is interesting in this game. The soundtrack is composed by Noriko Matsueda and Takahito Eguchi, and it's very different from a lot of other Final Fantasy games. We talked about like the campy tone of the story. A lot of the music is this like upbeat, like kind of dance guitar based music. A lot of like dance rhythms, catchy melodies and stuff like that. Some even have like some big band style horns and stuff. Really interesting soundtrack. Can't say it's one of my favorites in the series, but it does kind of fit the world living after you defeat the big evil in the previous game. So everyone's kind of living a a happy life and discovering happiness again. Like the music kind of reflects that, I think. Interesting.
Yeah, I like quite a few of the tracks a lot. Like the intro, not the introduction to the game, but when you boot it up, that piano melody that plays, I think is one of my favorite Final Fantasy songs.
It's good.
Yeah, it's really nice. But even back then, when I'd played this for the first time, I remember thinking, oh, why didn't they just get Nobuo Uematsu to do this? Because that would have been better. But yeah, it's a different vibe. It's a different take. And, you know, for better or worse, I appreciate that they tried something new.
Yeah.
With the J-pop songs, though,
yeah, the
I don't know if you want to talk about that. Yeah, I thought they were all really good. Like, that What Can I Do For You song, terribly translated, but catchy as hell.
Yeah, I think there are two, like, actual, like, pop songs. Maybe three? Yeah. I can only think of two. But the two that I can think of, they're real cheesy when you first hear them, but like about a minute or so into the song, I'm nodding my head along, like I'm into it. Especially 1,000 Years, which there's a big concert scene, and Yuna sings this song called 1,000 Years, and it's like a really like catchy, good pop song. I really enjoy it.
It is very of the time, like early 2000s. Power ballad, Mandy Moore style, Jessica Simpson-ish kind of like pop ballad. And I'm like, you know what? It's Yuna singing it, so I don't care. This is great.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, that was one of those things that like when I first looked at Final Fantasy X-2, I'm like, Yuna's singing this song? I don't fucking want this. And then like when I actually get around to playing it, I'm like, no, this is a bop. I'm into it.
Yeah.
So... yeah. Other like, I guess, musical identity in the game. A lot of the like battle tracks are built on like rock, electric guitar type stuff, which is, there was some of that in Final Fantasy X, and you know, not unlike other games in the Final Fantasy series to use like rock and electric guitar and stuff too. But those are like your two main vibes of the game. You've got your pop, whether it has vocals or not, and then you have like these electric guitar songs too.
It's almost like electric guitar, but in a jazzy style. It's very strange.
It's definitely not like the heavy metal song from Final Fantasy X. Like it's not like that at all.
Also, looking back on that song, I kind of cringe nowadays. That whole screamo thing.
We talked about it in that episode. It makes me laugh, and I like it because I like Final Fantasy X, but it's not a good song.
No, I remember back in the day, though, I was like, oh, I'm so cool. Listen to this. I'm wicked. Like, this is hard rock. Yeah. And now I'm like, okay, I kind of cringe when that song comes on. But anyway, it's good.
Yeah, music in 10-2, like I said, it's got a lot of good songs in it. I like it for matching the vibe of the game. It's very different from like the way soundtracks work in a lot of other Final Fantasy games. Uematsu's not doing it, so a lot less focus on, you know, character themes that, you know, reflect the emotion of the scene and stuff like that. Like there's not a whole lot of that, but it is a lower budget production than a lot of the main games. So I don't know, it's still good though.
For what it is, I think it's good, but a lot of people would judge it quite harshly simply because it's not Uematsu. And I'm one of those people that was guilty of doing that back in the day. I appreciate what it is now, though. Yeah,
I don't think that's fair to what it's actually doing. I think the people who worked on it did a good job. Let's do some wrap-up thoughts before we get into the spoiler section for Final Fantasy X-2. As we always answer in this section, Adam, who would you recommend play Final Fantasy X-2?
I would recommend people play it if they like Sailor Moon. I would recommend people play it who are comfortable with their masculinity, because it is a quote-unquote girly game. But I actually didn't think it was like super girly. I think this game is like perfect for someone who's into that sort of J-pop idol, Japanese style thing. Like in Tokyo Mirage Sessions, for example, they're all about like being pop idols and stuff. It's very similar to that in a vibe, but not an actual like set in real life kind of pop idol thing. And for everything that we say about J-poppy stuff, there's only 2 songs in this. It's not like they're actually a traveling J-pop group. But it's got that silliness, that vibe. And I think in some ways this game was like ahead of its time, because if you look at like modern day K-pop, that shit is fucking viral. If this game came out in modern day with this J-pop, K-pop style stuff going on, people would be like in love with it. But because it came out so early in the 2000s, before that was mainstream and popular, people have criticized it. So this game is for people who appreciate an Eastern style of pop music, who appreciate magical girl anime style costume change. And if you don't like it, you can take your toxic masculinity and fuck off. Because if you give this game a chance, you're going to see something good in it. And don't be like my co-host on fucking Good, the Bad, and the Backlog, Kieran, who didn't play this game past chapter 1 because it was too girly, too poppy for him. All I have to say about that is the reason why he doesn't like it is because he's a homophobe. So there you go. Mic drop.
Well, I don't know how I follow that up. So I'll just say my main unqualified recommendation is, if you love the story of Final Fantasy X, you should play this, because this game is for you. We didn't really answer the question of, well, we did kind of touch on it, but like there's some sequels where it's like, do you need to play the first game? And some of them, the answer is no. This one's a definite yes. You should play the first game first. And this game is made for people who love the story of the first game and want to see an interesting take on a sequel story after the kind of story that Final Fantasy X is. And I think that they did all of that stuff really well. I had a lot of trouble with the gameplay, but I see what's there for people who do like it. Like, I don't think the gameplay's bad. I just didn't like it. If you're the type who loves customizing jobs and grinding out abilities and mastering all of these things and creating strategies and stuff, like there's a lot here for you. That's not me though. So I had a hard time, but it's still an easy recommendation if you like Final Fantasy X. If you didn't like Final Fantasy X, like maybe there's something else about the atmosphere, the campy tone of it all, but like this is very much the sequel to Final Fantasy X. So it's hard to recommend outside of people who already like the first game, I think. Like people might like the gameplay as an RPG, you might like that, but I don't know how much the story is going to do for you if you don't already love the story of 10.
Yeah, actually, that's something that I wanted to bring up as well that I forgot about, was this is like quintessential JRPG customization stuff. So if you're really into that and you're a big JRPG fan, you could find a lot to love here as well.
Yeah. If you like job systems, this is a game for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we get into spoilers, it's time for a little bit of housekeeping. Before I talk about myself, Adam, tell people about The Good, the Bad, and the Backlog and where people can find you.
All right. So The Good, the Bad, and the Backlog is my podcast that I do with my co-host Kieran, who has recently been fired for hating on Final Fantasy X-2. However, we are another Backlog podcast. We actually, unfortunately, through the entire year of 2023, we didn't play very many high-profile games, which is why our listenership has disappeared. But we are planning on covering more important and popular games in the coming year. So definitely check us out if you like a bit of banter, if you like a very non-serious take on games that we've been playing. We tend to play a lot of games that we kind of suspect are going to be bad, and then lo and behold, it turns out that they're really bad. So we will shit on some of them. But yeah, come and check us out on The Good, the Bad, and the Backlog. Our link tree is linktr.ee/goodbadbacklog. And while I'm doing that, if you don't mind, I'd also like to promo King of Games 1996.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's either out now or coming imminently soon to the Retro Hangover podcast's main feed, where you can catch me as one of the main hosts and the very own Dave Jackson as a guest on many of the episodes, and we did many of them together. So yeah, come and check out King of Games 1996. It's a tournament-style podcast where we pit games against each other from the year 1996 to find out which game deserves to be crowned the king of all games of 1996.
Yeah.
yeah, so just Google or search for Retro Hangover Podcast and you'll see it on there.
Yeah, and Chris and Shane from Retro Hangover have both been guests on this podcast before. So yeah, really recommend people go check out the King of Games. This episode's going to come out in March, so I think it will still be only on their Patreon, but it will be coming to their main podcast feed in a couple of months. So you can go ahead and subscribe to Retro Hangover, and you'll start getting those King of Games 96 episodes. It was a lot of fun. I played a lot of games for the first time for that tournament. We had a good time. And also The Good, the Bad, and the Backlog, despite Adam's best efforts in pitching, I think is a really fun show. Adam and Kieran have great banter between the two of them. Lots of games that you say are unimportant or not popular, but that means I often get to listen to you two talk about games that no one else is talking about. So that has value, and I appreciate that. So
true. It's normally like, what's currently free on PSN? Let's go and play that.
Well, there's value there too. It's a really good show. I appreciate it. Proud to be a patron of it and support what you guys are doing.
Thank you very much.
Recommend people. Why don't you give me one? I'll give you one first. For The Good, the Bad, and the Backlog, I think people should listen to your Days Gone episode. That's probably my favorite episode of yours.
Yeah, so much so that the hanky code has become an ongoing joke and an in-joke for quite some time. And that joke was made like 2 years ago now, almost.
Yeah.
I would like to recommend, actually, just maybe the Game of the Year episode that we recently did for 2023. That was a fun one because it was also a mailbag episode, and we don't often talk too much about our personal life, but I like to squeeze in a couple of personal anecdotes here and there, and there's quite a few in the Game of the Year episode. So, yeah, get to know us a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So you can check down in the show notes for links to both The Good, the Bad, and the Backlog, and for Retro Hangover if you want to check out the King of Games 96. And if you would like to support this show, ratings and reviews are really helpful. So if people are looking for podcasts about Final Fantasy X-2, they might find this episode. Help juice that algorithm. You can join the Discord server if you want to come in and talk about Final Fantasy X-2, other video games, movies, stuff like that. The Discord server is a good place to do it. And you can also support monetarily by going to patreon.com/RealDaveJackson. That is the Patreon. And you can vote in polls. You can get bonus episodes, all kinds of cool treats. I also have another show called A Top 3 Podcast where we do top 3 lists. I think that show is a good time, and I hope you will too. So Adam and I are going to take a break, and when we come back, it is spoiler time for Final Fantasy X-2.
'Cause 1,000 words call out through the ages. They'll fly to you, even though I can see. I know they're reaching you, suspended on silver wings. Oh, 1,000 words, 1,000 embraces will cradle you, making all of your weary days seem far away. They'll hold you forever.
All right, Adam and I are back, and it's full spoiler time for Final Fantasy X-2, and we'll just start this off. There's a couple of big talking points I want to hit on throughout this. It's not really going to be a chronological walkthrough of the story, but there are some things I want to talk about for sure. The first of which being the sensual massage part. This is just a way to kick off the spoiler section. This isn't a really important part, but we talked about mini games earlier, and one mini game that neither of us brought up is that at some point in the game, when LeBlanc and her crew are still the villains, Yuna has to put on a disguise, infiltrate her house, basically, and yada, yada, yada. Yuna's in servant's uniform in LeBlanc's bedroom, and LeBlanc demands a massage. So you do this massage mini game to make her fall asleep. I think that's the goal of it, is to get her to fall asleep.
Well, when everyone climaxes, they fall asleep, right? It's like a
That's
dopamine
true.
rush.
The mission thing that goes up on the screen that says like mission start, and your objective that's written on the screen is not
give
LeBlanc a massage. It is, quote, satisfy LeBlanc.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah. It's a really weird mini game where like you have to pick the right spots on her back to massage, and if you pick the wrong one, you get like this bone cracking sound, and she like screams in pain. And if you get the right part, she moans in pleasure, and you try and do that enough times to make her fall asleep.
Yeah, I like that mini game. Did you find it sexy? Is that a good question? Were you aroused? Okay.
Goofy as hell. No, I was not aroused by it. Goofy as hell. But
there's a certain level of like when something is supposed to be sexy, you can tell that it makes you uncomfortable or whatever. But then when something is supposed to be really silly, you just go along with it and you think it's funny. And this was one of the silly things with a sexual innuendo buried underneath. I was like, I really like this. This is hilarious to me.
It's funny, but I don't think that it's sexual innuendo being buried. It's very like...
Yeah, well, overt.
Yeah, it's very overt, but it's also not... it's not sexy in the least. Like,
yeah.
Yuna's wearing like this full body suit that like her face is covered, and like she's wearing like hazmat clothes. That's what
she looks like a
basically.
Gimp.
Yeah. Maybe it is sexy. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, maybe it's an S&M thing. Have you ever had an S&M massage before?
I have not.
Have you had a massage in general from like
I have
someone
had
that you
massages,
paid?
yeah.
Okay. I don't want to go off tangent, but I had a massage once from a woman who just recently got back from the food court because it was in a shopping mall, and she had been eating something garlicky, and the entire time she was massaging me, she was burping and I could smell her food.
Oh, Jesus.
And then she blew her nose, and she was sniffling the whole time. She blew her nose. I kid you not, she did not wash her hands, and then she immediately began massaging me again. So after that, no more massages.
No. What a terrible thing to have taken away from you. Massages are great. Yeah.
Well, I didn't get the LeBlanc experience. Let's just say that. So
yeah.
This game set me up for an expectation which was never delivered in my adult life when I actually went for a massage. So
yeah, not to continue the tangent, but I did go for a massage in Bali one time that I thought was just a regular massage when I went in there, a cheap massage. It turned out to be a LeBlanc experience. And in the middle of it, there was this Australian guy in the next stall who was yelling about them stealing his wallet. So I got up and like got the fuck out of there real fast.
Oh my God. Did she try and happy ending you?
That was the vibe I was getting, was coming.
Okay.
Yeah. But I didn't stick around for that whole thing.
Yeah. I have another story, but I won't tell it just yet about Bali.
Okay.
So let's move on.
Maybe if we need to fill time at the end of the episode. Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. I'll retell this Bali story that somebody else told me. Happened to a friend of a friend of mine.
All right. So massage, check. First, like kind of big thing I want to talk about for Final Fantasy X-2 is all of those things that we hinted at as like this game as a sequel to the story of Final Fantasy X and how people are living basically after all of that. I think something we can talk about is the Guado that we kind of set up in the non-spoiler part. But the Guado are like really guilty about how things turned out in Final Fantasy X with Seymour and how they followed him, and they were the villains for, well, not all of them, but, you know, some of them. Some of them were running the church, which was, you know, controlling people's lives with a lie and all of that. And in this game, you get to see them kind of like reconcile with, you know, how they live after they made a bunch of bad choices earlier, like in the original game.
You're forgetting one particular thing that they did that was notably bad. They massacred a lot of the Ronsos.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a bit of beef going on there.
Yeah. So the Ronso, there's a side quest where some of the young Ronso want to go like kill all of the Guado, and you have to go kind of help Kimahri talk them down from that. And then the Guado are like basically like living in depression, and some of them are living in like self-imposed exile. Like some of them say like, we're just going to go out in the forest until we die. Like that's how they decide to deal with it.
Yeah. They all abandoned Guado Salam, which was their home, and they're all living in Macalania Woods. Mm-hmm. And because they abandoned Guado Salam, that's where LeBlanc has set up her little headquarters and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very much we've done something real bad and we're going to punish ourselves for it because we don't feel like we should be a part of society anymore. Yeah. And that's kind of hard to take. Especially because most of it was under the orders of Seymour, who was obviously no longer around. But it's kind of like, do they take the blame? Like, should they take the blame for that when they weren't necessarily acting on their own beliefs so much as being instructed by somebody else? I don't know. It's a gray area.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's that kind of, the Germans after World War II, like taking orders from somebody, and this is fantasy land, so they're taking orders from somebody who is much more powerful in like physical and magical strength than the average citizen. But it is interesting how they live with that. They decide that they're going to basically just go out in the woods and fucking die. That's how a lot of them decide that they're going to deal with it. Mm-hmm. And then the way that quest ends is kind of goofy, but like there's a getting the band together side quest that you do where you try and round up these musicians to put on a concert, and the Guado hear the band playing in the woods and they say it heals their souls. And so now they're not going to wait in the forest until they die. So the ending of that quest was kind of weird, but like all the setup for it I thought was pretty good. They kind of pick a lot of different little avenues to explore how people handle life after Final Fantasy X.
Yeah. No, I agree. The music heals everything kind of storyline was a bit of a cop-out ending, but I appreciated hearing throughout the chapters as each one progressed, you can revisit, and then God, I can't remember his name. His name's not Trafalgar? No, that's not it. The green-haired guy. Green-haired Guado guy. The way he explains what's happening to his people, how they're feeling about it, what they're planning to do, how they feel about the Ronso and what they've done, and how they can make amends by just disappearing. All that kind of stuff was like deeply fascinating, even if it wasn't the most engaging series of side quests from a gameplay point of view. Just digesting that story was particularly good. And that's something that you can really easily miss if you're just like, fuck it, I'm just going to play the main story.
Yeah, and you would miss the Ronso storyline too, the other side of it. Like like you did. I did some of it. I didn't finish it. I did the first part where Kamari is talking about how the young people are going to march off to war to go kill all the Guado. And Kamari's like, I can't help because I have to stand here at the bottom of the mountain or whatever. Like he gives some excuse why he can't. But that was interesting too, to see both sides, how they deal with this atrocity that happened in the past, basically.
Yeah. I think the way that it ended for the Ronsos was, at least in my game, they kind of accepted that what happened has happened and that continuing on the violence is just going to create a whole nother cycle, which isn't going to be good for anyone. So they sort of not necessarily choose to forgive and forget, but they choose to move on. So yeah, and I think they come to that conclusion by these two Ronso kids who have been out seeing the world for themselves, trying to like figure out, you know, what it is that they actually want to do. Do they really want to kill all these Guado? And initially they do, but then they come to find that there's more that the world has to offer, if I'm remembering it correctly. Yeah. Violence is bad, basically. Two main themes of the story: music heals everything and violence is bad. Okay.
We're going to revisit music healing everything because there's a particularly goofy part in the main story about that later. Let's see. Other stuff, sequel stuff. I guess the big thing, it's part of the main quest, but part of what you're doing in this game is there's a bunch of like disturbances at the temples around Spira. And part of the main quest is that Yuna has to go to the temples and help out. Even though a lot of times people don't want her to go there, feel like she's the only person who should be allowed to go in there or should be welcomed in, but there's a bunch of, warring factions in this game, and they don't want Yuna around, so sometimes you have to sneak through. Anyway, what you find out is causing these disturbances in the temples is that, I wasn't quite clear on this, but versions of her old Aeons have popped up, dark Aeons. Like, are they reincarnated or are they ghosts?
There are manifestations from the far plane.
Yeah.
And it has something to do with Vegnagun.
Okay.
Because he's burying down through the ground and everything is connected to the far plane, and then it's almost like somehow he's sending these darker versions of the Aeons up from the far plane to fight back.
Right.
Against the people.
And the Aeons are in the far plane. The far plane's kind of like the afterlife, life stream type thing. They're in there because one of the big climactic moments in Final Fantasy X is that Yuna has to kill all of her Aeons one by one. And it's kind of an emotional scene because they are your summons throughout the game. They were the tools that she was going to use to fight Sin. And then at the end of the game, she has to kill them all. And I don't know if you know this. We talked about this in the Final Fantasy X episode. If you have on a sensor, I think it is, you can see their thoughts, the Aeon's thoughts, and they're all saying stuff like, please kill me, please put an end to this. And it's really fucked up.
No, I didn't.
In 10, not this game.
Yeah, I think I vaguely knew that. I remember seeing it, but that was like 20 years ago, so I don't really remember.
So this is interesting, like, because this is a big climactic moment in 10. She kills all of her Aeons in order to remove the power of Yu Yevon at the end. And then in this game, her Aeons are back, and she has to face like this traumatic thing that she did at the end of the first game and kill them again. And you have to go through one by one all of the Aeons, even the optional ones. And it's just really interesting for her to have to confront this like memory that she's probably trying to bury this memory of. But now it's back. She has to kill all of the Aeons again.
Yeah, I liked that. They're definitely the dark versions of the Aeons.
They are the dark versions, yeah.
Do you remember, was there an explanation in 10 for why the dark versions were there?
Nope. I don't remember an explanation other than, optional bosses for sickos.
Okay. All right. Because I was just wondering if there was maybe some sort of lore reason why the dark versions in particular are the ones that are in this game, other than they just look scarier.
Yeah.
But yeah, I liked that aspect because, well, I mean, let's be honest, they didn't have the highest budget, so they were using assets. So,
yeah.
Any reusable asset that they can use, they're going to use it. But yeah, having her fight back against the Aeons, I think it's only really... No, she comments on it with a couple of them. Valefor, is that how you say it? Valefor?
I always said Valefor, but...
I always took it as Vale as in like a gale of wind.
Right.
But, if somebody else isn't pronouncing it, who knows the correct answer. But anyway, her first summon, she comments that she just had to kill her first summon. And then there's also Bahamut, where she sort of stands up and opposes him because Bahamut is not only one of her main summons from Final Fantasy X, but he is essentially a faith himself, which she had a direct communication with in 10, which is what makes him slightly more special, is because he is the one responsible for Tidus being basically brought to Spira.
Right. Okay.
In some way.
I thought the part with Valefor was really interesting because it's in Besaid. Again, you're going back to the first location from the first game. You got to fight the first Aeon, and then at the end of it, you beat Valefor, and the people there, they want to burn the temple down to stop this from ever happening again.
Yeah.
And Yuna and Waka don't want to. And I thought this was really interesting because in Final Fantasy X, Waka was the most religious person in the group, besides maybe Yuna. Yep. They were the top two, most religious, for sure. But in 10, they found out that their religion was a lie. So part of me would think that like this temple represents a lie that was sold to them and that they would want to, but they don't. And I thought it was really interesting. I think Yuna gives a an explanation that she still has fond memories of the beginning of her journey at this temple with Waka and Lulu. That's where she met Tidus for the first time. And it was like, just kind of gave me this idea that the memory that she has with the group, she comments on in a lot of different places in this game, supersedes how this place also represents like the lie that was sold to them from the Yevon religion, basically.
Yeah. It makes sense. Like, you can be an atheist and still appreciate how beautiful Notre Dame Cathedral is.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
And also, if you're looking at the infrastructure of a island like Besaid, there's not like there's that many buildings there. So
yeah.
the temple would be quite useful to keep around.
That's true. Yeah. Just an interesting like story thing. I think little moments like this are some of the strongest stuff, like story-wise, that this game does, is commenting on all parts of the journey, everybody who is involved. It's really good. The one where you fight Dark Yojimbo is the one where people got trapped in the temple by monsters, tourists, because it turns into a tourist destination. And Yuna's kind of like, you know what? Fuck them. Like, that serves you right for going in there and defiling this place. But you go get them out anyway. Dark Ixion was kind of interesting because it was fused with a machine when you fight it. It was kind of interesting, like body horror for an Aeon. So Yuna probably didn't like seeing that. And after you beat Dark Ixion, this kind of kicks off like the next part of the story. Like the early part of the story was like the LeBlanc Team Rocket storyline. You know, somebody's going to try and take over this mech weapon, but after you fight Dark Ixion, that's what kicks off like the real story here. And there's an explosion that knocks Yuna down into this big pit. All the Aeons are coming out of these big pits in the chambers of the faith, in these temples. She falls down into the far plane where she hears, quote, Tidus, who you think is Tidus at this point, talking. And then he appears. So he's the guy from the recording, from the sphere earlier in the game. And he shows up. And the only problem is he says that his name is Shuyin, and that he says that he misses her. And by her, he doesn't mean Yuna. He calls her Len. So you have these two look-alike characters that are not who you thought they were, basically. And they're not who each other thinks that they are.
Or
yeah,
it is originally Tidus, and his real name was Shuyin from the beginning, and he is gaslighting the hell out of Yuna to make her think her name is Len because he's tired of her name being Yuna. Just a fan theory.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because now we start talking about like the real story of Final Fantasy X-2, which is the story of the reappearance of Len and Shuyin, and something that gives context to the story in Final Fantasy X. So a little backstory here before we get into that theorizing. 1,000 years ago, title of that pop song, 1,000 Years, Len was a popular singer in Xanarkand, the future version of Xanarkand, like the high-tech version that Tidus starts Final Fantasy X in. But then the Machina War broke out, and Len just happened to also be a summoner, so she got sent to the front lines. Shuyin is her partner, we'll say, love interest, not totally sure. Shuyin tried to steal a Machina weapon and save her, but they both died. There's a cutscene where in the present day, there's a bunch of like fighting between these factions, and Yuna decides that the way to heal the world is to have a concert. So they put on this concert in the fucking Thunder Plains, of all places in Spira, to have this concert. And she gets up on stage and she's singing this song, 1,000 Years. And during the song, like the projection of Len like comes out basically. And the cutscene shows Yuna and Len singing side by side. And so what actually happened is the dress sphere, the songstress dress sphere that Yuna has been using, Len had that dress sphere 1,000 years ago. So she kind of like reawakens when Yuna starts using that. And then Shuyin knows that Len is there and is trying to get back together with her.
The 1,000 Years song, by the way, is a really, really good cutscene. It's probably my favorite cutscene of the entire game, just based on like all the visual fluff and all the particle effects and stuff. The song also is a banger, like we said earlier.
Yeah.
But it's like this juxtaposition. And I love this whole idea of this dress sphere is like the embodiment of a person from 1,000 years ago, and Yuna is just borrowing it to borrow this job of songstress or whatever. But it's almost like the spirit of that person is in the dress sphere, and it just awakens from this moment of singing this song, and it's something about the reaction to the thunder plains and blah blah blah. It's like her spirit comes alive again from the past and sings a little song about her love, Shuyin, which mirrors Yuna's love with Tidus. So it's like they are 1,000 years apart, but they're experiencing a similar thing. So I thought that was awesome. And something important to also bring up is this Machina weapon that Shuyin was trying to steal is the reason why Sin was summoned in the first place. Because 1,000 years ago, there's this Machina war, or this big war between Bavel and Zanarkand. And Yu Yevon, who was the main summoner, is the guy who eventually summoned Sin to end this war. And the reason why he did that was because Bavel had a Machina weapon which was capable of destroying the world. And this is something that Lulu, I believe, brings up in Final Fantasy X while they're riding the shoe puff across the Moonflow Lake thing.
Yeah.
So it's mentioned in 10, and it's kind of like they just took that little thing and was like, all right, let's make that the main antagonist of, or the big bad of the sequel. So it's kind of like it's like Sin version 2, but in Machina form, which I think is really cool.
Basically, yeah. So during that 1,000 Years concert cutscene in the Thunder Plains, you get the cutscene of Yuna singing, and then Len kind of like comes out, and Yuna and Len are singing side by side. Like they don't see each other there, they don't talk to each other or something, but they're both there. You can see them. But what's also happening is you see the flashbacks of how Len and Shuyin died 1,000 years ago, just getting killed in combat, basically, trying to protect each other. And so, like you said, this sets up like this dual storyline with these two couples trying to find each other 1,000 years apart.
Yeah.
Shuyin has like reappeared in the present day because Len is back, I think. I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure having Yuna use the dress sphere has somehow awakened Shuyin from the far plane.
Yeah,
that's
something like that.
Yeah, I'm going to assume it's something like that. They don't say specifically why he's back and why now, but it would make sense that that's the reason why.
Yeah. And so Shuyin is like doing everything in his power to find Len, just like Yuna is doing everything in her power to find Tidus. Back to that fan theory, I think that the resemblance is too similar for Shuyin to not be the original Tidus. Like the thing that Tidus was based on, modeled after, because Tidus is a projection of sorts in Final Fantasy X. He's not real. I think that that's Shuyin.
Yes, I think so too. Are you aware of the whole theories about Dream Zanarkand and Real Zanarkand?
Maybe, but probably not.
Okay. So Dream Zanarkand in Final Fantasy X is not actually 1,000 years in the past. It is current and in modern day Spira. It is just so far out into the ocean and protected by Sin and harsh waters and stuff, that nobody can travel there.
Okay.
This is this theory that I've read on the internet. I don't know if it's true or not, but this is how they explained it. So in the original game, Tidus didn't travel in time. He was existing in the current time and place, but as a projection, a summoning of the faith, which is Dreams Anakin is basically like that whole pillar of the faith in real Zanarkand area. There's like thousands and thousands of people that have become this faith and are doing a summoning. If I'm correct, I'm pretty sure they're also summoning Sin. So they're summoning Sin and this other Dreams Anakin, which is made up of their memories of the real Zanarkand. So if real Zanarkand existed 1,000 years ago and Shuyin was a part of real Zanarkand, it would make sense that the faith that are summoning this Dreams Anakin have created Tidus as some kind of conglomeration of different people from 1,000 years ago, and Shuyin is probably the basis for which they base that off. But you know, like how in a dream, the floor isn't really the floor and things get confused and stuff, and you could be speaking to your mother, but at the same time, she's also Debbie Reynolds or Marge Simpson or something. You know, like things don't make sense. Things get confused and mixed around. So maybe this dream version of Tidus is originally based off of Shuyin, but because he is essentially an Aeon in himself, he is a summoned being from this other dream world. He is what they imagine this person to be then and there, and he's given form, and he's not like based specifically just like there's no 1,000-year ago version of Tidus. There's Shuyin from 1,000 years ago who looks identical to him. They remember what Shuyin looks like, but they've given him his own identity now. Does that make sense? So that's vaguely the theory.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And like one of the things that helps theories like that is that Final Fantasy X clearly demonstrated that the faith do have real power, and that like stuff like that is possible. They do real fucking magic in Final Fantasy X. So it does make sense. And it makes sense like with what I think they're trying to set up with this whole Shuyin and Len storyline. It makes sense that Tidus was based off of Shuyin. It would tie everything together really neatly, really satisfying way. So Shuyin is going to all of these lengths to try to find Len. Len is inside of Yuna. What Shuyin eventually decides to do is to try and take over Vegnagun, which is that giant machina weapon, again. And the only way to stop him basically is to kill him. And I think that as most people are playing through Final Fantasy X-2, I think a lot of people are going to be hoping that they will bring Tidus back, because what you want for Yuna is for her to have a happy ending and to reunite with Tidus. Like, I think a lot of people at least start this game hoping that, because the way Final Fantasy X ends, it's really fucking sad when he disappears and all of that. So
yeah,
I think that like Shuyin's quest to get to Len represents the player and Yuna's desire for her to reunite with Tidus. And your quest at the end to defeat Shuyin and put an end to it all is kind of like a figurative representation of defeating that desire to reunite with Tidus, to kind of put that to bed and realize that that's not the most important thing. And they have conversations with Shuyin, and Len actually says something to that effect. She says something like, it doesn't matter that you couldn't save me. It's okay to rest instead of persisting on by yourself. Like, it's okay to basically give up on this. It's okay to move on. And I think that they're trying to tell that in a way to us and to Yuna, that it's okay to not reunite with Tidus. And that's not the point of this whole thing. That was my read on this.
I would semi-agree, but I feel like Len and Shuyin did reunite, because she comes out of the dress sphere and stuff and reunites with Shuyin, and they have like this little moment towards the end, and then they both go off to the far plane together. So it's kind of like they're moving on or going to quote unquote heaven together, but they are finally together. So that's how I kind of read that. I do agree with you, however, that I think Yuna seeing Len and Shuyin should have been or is her way of accepting that she may or may not ever be reunited with Titus.
Yeah.
So I think that it's almost like she's accepting the fact that these two people who died 1,000 years ago had been separated for 1,000 years. And it's hard to explain because at the one point it's like, I feel like the lesson that she should be learning is that it's okay to move on, be your own person, and live your own life without pining for this guy that's no longer there. And that's a great lesson. But at the same time, it's almost like she's also learning that if you truly love someone, even after 1,000 years of being separated as spirits, you will be reunited. You know what I mean? So it's kind of got like that Disney thing to it. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm guilty of being one of those people that started playing Final Fantasy X-2 thinking, oh, I can't wait for them to get back together because I love these two characters. Of course.
Back when I thought I would never play this game, I watched the real ending on YouTube because I wanted to see them get back together. I knew that was going to be it because it had to be. Like, you have to reunite the couple.
Yeah.
There's other interesting dialogue, like in the boss fight and before the boss fight from Yuna, that makes me think that she is realizing that this is not to say that it's not important, but like to show that she's okay with moving on also. There's dialogue from Len to that effect too. And I think that like Yuna seeing Len tell Shuyen that the past can't be recovered and that it's time to rest and move on, I think that Yuna can see that and realize that like her own lost past can't be recovered either. Yeah.
I think the interpretation of this is going to be vastly different based on how old you are.
Yeah,
because,
I think so.
Yeah, like as a teenager when I was playing this, I was all about, get them back together, true love, love conquers all that Disney shit kind of stuff. Yeah. And now as like a 30-plus-year-old who has been through handfuls of relationships, shall we say, it's like I'm seeing it as, you know what? You love someone. It didn't work out. They're gone now. You need to move on, better yourself, and find somebody else because, you can't define yourself by a single relationship. And unfortunately, this isn't the Final Fantasy version of Sex and the City. This is like, that kind of Disney storytelling of, love conquers all and true love and blah, 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 blah. True love doesn't exist, FYI. Just kidding. But never to this degree. True love is like tolerating somebody who snores because you like spending time with them. True love isn't like trying to go down to the depths of the far plane to bring somebody back from the dead. Right.
Commandeering a giant mech weapon and trying to destroy the world because you'll literally do anything. Yeah.
That's not true love. That's a personality disorder.
That's true. Yeah. There's also a really good speech that Yuna gives that I wanted to talk about here. I think it's actually right before you fight Vegnagun and then fight Shuyen. Yuna gives a really good monologue. It's probably the best speech that Yuna's ever done in both of these games, other than maybe the one where she's saying goodbye to everybody in Final Fantasy X. She talks about how it felt to kill her Aeons at the end of Final Fantasy X. She talks about how she felt when Tidus faded away. And she talks about how she knew that this is what they had to do to save Spira, but after it was over, it didn't make them feel any better. They still felt pain, how they still felt regret, and how after the fact, everybody tells themselves that they had no choice, which might be true, but telling yourself that and, knowing the knowledge that like you had to do that doesn't actually help you move on from everything. And that kind of like galvanizes everybody for the fight against Vegnagun. And then after that, I think you get that quote from Len where Len talks about how you can't recover the past. And I think that like these two things together show that Yuna's starting to understand that nothing is really going to solve all of that hurt, from killing the Aeons, from watching friends die. Orin faded away after that, I believe. And yeah, the pain of Tidus disappearing, like this kind of endless questing and effort and all of that, like number one, it might not be possible, but number two, it might not solve everything. And I think that like Yuna starts to realize this throughout this part.
Yeah. That speech is the key turning point of Yuna's character development throughout both games. Like, she has been through all this shit in the first game, and then in the second game, she like finally, to throw it back to the beginning where I think I said something about her having a facade of trying to figure out who she's supposed to be. You see her completely drop that facade here. She is 100% the person who she was from the first game, but grown and matured. And she's just like, your plan sucks. This is shit. Like, we're not going to sacrifice anyone to try and beat this. We can do this without unnecessary death because I'm tired of losing the people that I care about. And I'm like, oh, you go, girl.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just like it's a very great moment of personal maturity and growing. And I'm like, this is good. This is promising. And this is like that level of humanity and heart that a lot of people tend to overlook when they think about 10-2. They think about the silly and the goofy. They don't think about how, there's actually like quite a nuanced story of character development for Yuna in particular in this game. And it's summed up beautifully in just this one moment, in this one speech.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is the end of Yuna's quest. Like, Yuna, at the very beginning, she saw that recording of the person that looked like Tidus, and that gave her hope that they could be reunited. And this part where she gets to the end and she sees, number one, this isn't Tidus. Number two, he's on a fucking warpath and he wants to destroy the world because he's on the same quest that she's on. And she just realizes that, like, this is the end. This is it. This is not worth it, basically. Like, we can't keep doing this. I also thought it was very funny that when you fight Vegnagun, characters from the past encourage you from beyond. We'll see.
Yeah.
There are quotes from Braska, her father, Yuna's father, Jecht, with Tidus's father, for those who are just playing along, Orin, who was one of, well, actually the three of them, Braska, Jecht, and Orin, they defeated Sin the time before Yuna did. Jecht became Sin. He's Tidus's father. He's an asshole. And when you're fighting Shuyin, Jecht has a quote where he says, "Put that crybaby to sleep," because he looks like his son, and he always made fun of his son for crying because he's a piece of shit father.
Yeah.
And that made me laugh, just as a callback. So at the end of all of this, Yuna just says that she's going home, basically. No more questing to find Tidus. This is it. After you defeat Shuyin and Vegnagun and save the world, Yuna says this is the end of the quest. In the regular ending, that is. So before we talk about the regular ending, I think this is basically perfect to wrap up the story of Yuna throughout both games. This kind of slightly misguided but understandable quest to try and reunite with Tidus, but then realizing that it's either impossible or not worth it. All the trouble that you would have to go through to do it, all of the maybe suffering that other people would have to go through to do it, it's all not worth it. I think this is a really excellent ending. This is the ending that I got, of course.
Yeah, I think I got... I don't know why, but I seem to remember, even in this recent playthrough, that I got an ending where he comes back.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding how you unlock that ending. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know how. I have this sneaking suspicion that they've done something different with the remaster where it's like not so hard. I don't know. Maybe, look, honestly, I could be just combining the video that I watched on YouTube with my actual experience of playing the game. But I feel like I remember getting that experience, like actually getting that ending. But I don't know. Don't quote me on that. It's been a couple weeks. Anyway, I prefer... Actually, I'm not sure what I prefer.
Okay.
Let's just move on. You explain the ending, and then I'll figure out which I prefer.
Okay. So the true ending, the 100% ending, which I watched on YouTube before I even played this game, but then I watched it on YouTube again after finishing the game. You beat Shuyan, all of that's the same, and then at the end, the little Faith boy that's been in both games asks Yuna if she wants to talk with him again. Him, because they can't say Tidus's name, because in Final Fantasy X, you could name your character in a giant mistake for the story.
Yeah. Worst.
Tidus wakes up underwater, and he gets up and runs out. The airship pulls in. Yuna jumps off and runs out and gives him a hug. Very reminiscent of the end of 10 when she tries to run and give him a hug, but he disappears and she just passes through him, basically. It's the same here, except they connect. They do the hug. Yuna asks if he's real, and he says, I think so. Do I pass? And Waka yells, get a room, you two. And they kind of talk. Yuna says she has a lot to tell him about what's happened. Tidus talks a little bit, gives a monologue. He tries to piece together how he came back. He thinks that the Faith brought him back, or maybe he's still a dream, but he doesn't care because they're going to stay together. Yuna's kind of worried that this isn't real and that he's going to disappear again, and they kind of have a quick talk about it. And Tidus says, cherish me and I will cherish you. We got to stay together. And it's a really emotional reunion because, like, I'll talk about my feelings about this in a few minutes, but like, this is the reunion that I wanted the first time I finished Final Fantasy X. Like, you get the emotional reunion between them.
Yeah. See, the romantic in me really likes that they get back together.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have done it in a different way, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, I was happy to see them, but the adult me, I want to see Yuna off on her own, being like, I don't need no man. I'm strong and independent. I'm over that guy. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I can't decide which one I prefer. I think, young me really wanted that perfect ending so badly because I really cared about both characters so much. And now old me is so jaded that I just wanted her to be successful and independent on her own without him. I have also heard like some theories about how it is that he actually came back. And one of them was that since Yuna is a summoner, she's essentially just summoned him back. Like he is now her summon, which is interesting.
I suppose that, like, she didn't forget how to summon. There's just nothing left to summon until that point. So that could make sense.
I mean, each summon has to have a faith, right? So what if Yuna is her own faith for that summon and she's summoning the memory of him back or something like that? I don't know.
Now we're getting into like levels of how things work in the world that I don't quite understand.
Yeah, conspiracy theory stuff.
Yeah. One other thing about this real ending I thought was funny, real quick, is that they show Waka's baby. Waka and Lulu had their baby, and Waka's baby has his same like hair with like the flip up in the front and everything. It's very cute. So I think that as emotional as this ending is, and how much despite how much I thought I wanted this, going off of everything that led up to the ending, with the resolution of the Len and Shuyan story, I think that this ending is more fan service than serving everything else that came before it. Like, I don't really believe that this is the ending that the writers wanted. Like, this is not the canon ending, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because everything else leading up to this seems to be supporting Yuna realizing that this is not worth it for whatever reason she decides. Or maybe that it's impossible.
Have you played the Final Fantasy X-2 Last Mission thing that comes in the remaster stuff?
I did not, no. I heard about what it is, and whatever it was, I forgot. Didn't sound like something I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's a roguelike dungeon crawler type of thing. But
no.
Yeah, it's based on the canon. Well, it presumes that the ending where Tidus doesn't come back is the canon ending, so it continues on from that point. As if it's not the perfect ending.
Okay.
So I like to think that maybe yeah, maybe the perfect ending is the alternate ending, which isn't actually canon. So, yeah, I don't know. Let's go with that one. Although there's that whole audio drama thing, which is also on this compilation, which I haven't listened to, but it's apparently fucking terrible. So
that's what I hear.
Yeah. So if we're worrying about like fan service or fan fiction levels of writing, I'm pretty sure that the official writers have already reached that point. So let's just leave it at 10-2.
Yeah, I do think that this ending where they reunite is just fan service to avoid outrage from people who really wanted them to reunite, because it seems to fly in the face of the themes that they explored and then resolved with that Len and Shuyan story.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it was unnecessary, and it's only there because people want it. And if they didn't get it and they played this long-ass game and attempted to get a perfect ending and they didn't get Tidus back, there would be, not riots, because not that many people bought this, but there'd be some disgruntled forum posts for sure.
There'd be some angry, well, not in 2003, no angry tweets, but there'd be some really fucking choice MySpace statuses about this.
Absolutely. From the people that dared to get past the very introduction of the game that weren't turned off completely by J-pop.
And part of me is like, because they made it so difficult to get. So the ending where they don't reunite, that's the real ending. That's the story we're trying to tell. And if you fucking sickos want it that bad, if you want them to reunite that badly, you could get the 100%, which is an outrageous thing to do. Hope you bought the strategy guide or were trawling on GameFAQs in 2003 to get that 100%.
They wanted to torture the player and rub extra salt in the wound to be like, you want this? This is what you want?
Yeah.
Well, here you go. You're going to have to walk through flaming coals and snorting salt to get there or something.
Yeah.
We're going to make this as unpleasant as possible.
Yep, exactly. You're going to have to do that fucking cactar side quest in the desert.
Yeah. I actually did that one. You get a really good garment grid for it.
I would hope you do. I took one. I went and saw that quest and I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. No fucking way.
Normally I wouldn't, but it doubles AP and experience. So I was like, yes, I need that for
that's the grinding. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, just one. We already touched on like the serious story stuff. So the part where they do let you play Blitzball, I thought it was funny that Yuna and Riku and Pain and like the Albed fucking like cast-offs, like the Bad News Bears, they form a Blitzball team. The Gullwings form a Blitzball team. And their first match is against the Ronso. The image of Yuna, Riku, and Pain playing a combat sport, basically, against the Ronso that are like these 8-foot tall fucking like gorilla lion animals was very funny to me. Like they just get the shit kicked out of them in the first match you play.
I also love that like Blitzball is basically something that only people that can hold their breath for a really long time are able to do. And they just explain it away with Yuna being like, I've been practicing holding my breath.
Yeah.
Like, okay, great.
Cool. David Blaine, like you can hold your breath for like 25 minutes. You can play Blitzball.
Oh,
hope you don't get punched in the stomach. All right. Well, that is Final Fantasy X-2. And we had a lot to talk about. I'm happy we got to talk about those things with the Len and Shuyan storyline and how this game ties into Final Fantasy X. It's a really interesting sequel. I ended up with a lot of respect for the storytelling in here, which I thought was surprising. I didn't expect to come out of this with the final thought and like the most important thought I had about this game's story and about this game in general is that they really showed like a really deft touch with writing this. Like they showed respect for the original story. They showed respect for what happened in the original story. Characters reflect on what happened. And then they didn't give you, quote, what you want. Again, I don't think it's canon that they reunite, but the way that they got there was good enough that now I'm on their side, So it's really good. I'm just really impressed with how they handled this story.
Yeah. What you said just then, which was you don't get what you want. Is that what you said?
Yeah, like us, the teenage us, like you said, the teenage us that wants them to reunite. We didn't get what we want.
Perfect. I'm going to extend that into the fact that the players who came to 10.2 did not get what they want, which was more 10, because they gave us something which is different and new and updated and completely different in vibe than what you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But just because you didn't want it or what they were presenting to you doesn't mean that what's here isn't actually very good. Because, again, everybody saw this as being something that was not worth experiencing or playing based on what it was presenting to you in the very first few chapters of the game. And you had to dig deep enough to actually find something solid and good here. So if you look past all of the window dressing, the fancy outfits, the campness, the colorfulness, the lightheartedness, there is actually like key Final Fantasy X story expansion here.
Yeah.
That is worth experiencing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it was the great philosopher Socrates that said, you don't always get what you want.
Yeah.
But if you try sometimes, if you try Final Fantasy X too, you'll get what you need.
Exactly.
I think that was Socrates that said that. Adam, thank you for coming on, man. I really appreciate you taking all this time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We will give the recommendation again at the end of the show for everybody who stuck it out to the end to check out The Good, the Bad, and the Backlog, and to check out the King of Games 1996 tournament. Links, again, are both down in the show notes for this episode. Highly recommend that. Good podcasting stuff. And yeah, again, thank you everyone who tunes in to the end. You're heroes. Hope you've enjoyed this discussion, and tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.